Chapter 654. Since ancient times, the methods of instigation and brainwashing have been similar. It was to set up a target and desperately attract hatred to set the tempo. Then, it would arouse the shallow and impulsive anger of human beings. Once the crowd mentality had fully played its role, a major event would be expected. At this moment, Hero Yang was also desperately trying to set the tempo for Bai Yue. Sun Lang impatiently stretched his neck and yawned. He felt a little bored. He was not bragging, but when it came to setting the tempo and stirring up trouble, the gap between him and Hero Yang might be greater than the gap between the two of them in martial arts. At this moment, Yang Tian-du was speaking righteously on the stage. His vigorous internal energy sent his voice far away. Not only could the martial artists in the square hear him, but half of the people in the town could also hear him clearly. So, the nature of Hero Yang's internal energy transmission was equivalent to noise pollution and disturbing the people, right? Moreover, scolding the ancestor of the Bai family in Weichuan was really bold. It was even more exciting than square dancing in the middle of the road. Sun Lang dug his ears and continued to listen to the lecture in boredom. On the stage, Yang Tian-du had already finished arguing the justice of this illegal gathering. He was raising the spirit of this action and sublimating the motivation of this action. He said passionately, "So, brothers, why do we come away Chuan? Why do we challenge such a powerful sword saint's family? Is it just to seek justice? No, it's not. Among us, there are relatives and friends who died in Huaichuan, but most of them have no blood feud with the Bai family. Then why did they come here and oppose the Bai family, who is at the peak of their power? Why is this?" At this point, Hero Yang waved his hands and pointed to everyone present. "I see many martial artists here. Some I know, some I don't know. Some of them are heroes who have been famous for decades, and some of them are little brothers who have just entered the martial arts world. Why did they come here today? They don't have any enmity with the Bai family, so why would they take the risk of offending the Bai family and come here?" At this moment, Sun Lang heard someone mutter, F***CK. Of course, it's because the divine sword was taken away by Bai Yue. I can't accept it. Also, I'm here to watch the show. No matter how ruthless and tyrannical the Bai clan is, would they dare to kill everyone? Yes, this is very Jianghu. However, this kind of truth could not be said out loud. Sure enough, Hero Yang's voice resounded through the clouds. He said loudly, "Of course it's for the word righteousness. Our friends who died in Huaichuan might not have known us, but we all belong to the same Jianghu lineage. Nothing is more important than righteousness. The righteousness of the pugilistic world. The righteousness of the pugilistic world. What was the righteousness of the pugilistic world? This was the righteousness of the pugilistic world. The Walin people who gathered here for this matter were seeking justice for people they did not know. Even if the opponent was a world-renowned great-grandmaster or an aristocratic family from Qin province, they would not hesitate to fight. Come in the water, go in the fire." He raised his arms and shouted, "If we don't even care about righteousness, then what the F***CK are we doing in Jianghu?" Generally speaking, flattery and swearing were effective ways to get close to the rough men in Jianghu. This Hero Yang was indeed a hero. He was well-versed in the art of performance. With just a few words, he could make people's blood boil. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a wave of cheers and applause from the audience. However, Sun Lang casually patted the shoulder of a man who was shouting loudly near him. The man's attitude was particularly enthusiastic. He looked like a brainless fan and was shouting loudly, "I'm convinced by Brother Yang. You're the leader of the alliance." Feeling the pat on his shoulder, the man suddenly turned around and saw a young man smiling at him. He frowned and said, "What's wrong?" Sun Lang said mysteriously, "Brother, how do you calculate money in your line of work? How much are you going to pay? How much are you going to pay for each match? Are there any bonuses or performance bonuses?" The man's face suddenly changed. He looked around guiltily and then said in a low voice, "I don't know what you're talking about." Then he immediately squeezed out of the crowd and left quickly. He did not leave any harsh words and did not leave a trace of anger. What is a professional? This is a professional. He knew the principle of doing what he was paid for. Soon, Sun Lang heard a familiar shout not far away. "Hero Yang, take us up the mountain. You could be the leader. I'm convinced." "What the hell so dedicated?" Sun Lang was amused. He thought it was very interesting. Being a hero was like being a live streamer. He even hired shills and hired ghostwriters. He was thinking about how to make trouble when he heard Hero Yang on the stage continue. "Before I decided to come, some people tried to dissuade me. Some people even said I was stupid. Is the Bai family of Sichuan easy to mess with? Not to mention that Sword Saint Bai is a famous general of Tianyuan. He's famous in the world. He's a veteran of 3 dynasties. Is it worth it to fight with such a person for the lives of some worthless Jianghu men?" He laughed bleakly, then gritted his teeth and said, "Yes. He's a great hero of Tianyuan. He's a famous general who defeated the Sky Demon. He's everyone's savior. Maybe without him, we'd all be killed by the Sky Demon. So, what's the big deal if he casually kills a few hundred people? Isn't that right?" Some people say that even if this matter goes to the imperial court, His Majesty will protect Bai Yue. After all, he's a meritorious official of the empire. We're nothing. These words resonated with a lot of people. The Jianghu and the imperial court seemed to be 2 parallel lines that could never intersect. That was why there was the derogatory term imperial court's eagle claw and the disdain of Jianghu bandits. But the Jianghu bandits had a much stronger sense of inferiority. It was because of the imperial army. This kind of weapon was enough to make warriors transcend the mortal world and obtain divine power. Usually, it was only given to Jinshi who graduated from the military examinations. This was the gap between the emperor and the field sergeants. It was also because of the Great War of Tianyuan. The imperial court's eagles and hounds sacrificed their lives for the country. Even the unrestrained Jianghu men had to acknowledge their achievements and glory. But they were still unconvinced. Yang Tiandu's words hit the nail on the head. Or it could be said that he forcefully led the public opinion to the confrontation between the Jianghu martial artists and the imperial court martial artists. Hero Yang said sternly, "The heroes of Tianyuan are all great men. The reason we're able to stand here today is all thanks to their sacrifice. But when it comes to fighting against the Sky Demon, are they the only ones doing it? Haven't the heroes of Jianghu killed the Sky Demon? Haven't you fought to the death for the country? We Jianghu men also participated in the Great War of Tianyuan. Even our good friends here have fought against the Sky Demon. But we fought for justice and for the common people. We don't want the imperial court's rewards. We only ask for freedom and don't want restrictions. Leaving after winning the war is the magnanimity of a hero. And the soldiers of Tianyuan were rewarded for their meritorious deeds and brought honor to their ancestors. That's what they deserved. Everyone asked for justice and got it. It's only right. There's nothing to say." But he stood on a high platform and looked around. He said sternly, "But it's only right to be a high-ranking official and a generous salary. It's not right to disregard human life. The Bai family can dominate Weichuan and be famous all over the world, but they can't just slaughter us like pigs and sheep. They can't treat our lives as a joke. Even if they're the heroes of Tianyuan, they can't do that. No one can do that." Suddenly, there was a burst of roars and echoes from below the platform. For these clumsy Jianghu men, there were some things that they knew, but they couldn't say clearly. But Yang Tiandu had said what they wanted to say in their hearts. The atmosphere became very heated. In the midst of the noise, Hero Yang's voice still reached everyone's ears clearly. "Bai Yue can fight to the death for the country. So can we. What does he think we're doing right now? We're fighting to the death for the country, too. The heroes of Tianyuan deserve a high-ranking official and a generous salary. That's their reward. But 2 years after the war, things have changed. The heroes of the past have changed." His voice was earth-shattering. It was the horn of a battle. If everything went well, it would be the prelude of a great event. Yang Tiandu said emotionally. The heroes of the past were addicted to power and wealth. They gradually forgot the purpose of killing the enemy and became shameful and ugly scum. The Gold Radiance Grand Sword Master, an unparalleled general in the world, became an evil man who disregarded human life. If he has become like this, what about the others? So this time, we're not just trying to get justice. We're also trying to sound the alarm for the country. Because in the long run, the heroes of the past will gradually change. The heroes who saved the world in the past will become devils who destroy the world. Then, what's the difference between them and the Sky Demon? In the long run, the country will no longer be a country. The people who are recuperating will be hurt again, and the country will be in turmoil again. We can't let this happen, because we, the bandits of Jianghu, are also men. We have courage. We can fight to the death for the country. With a loud clang, Hero Yang unsheathed his sword and pointed it in the direction of the Bai clan fort. This time, we must demand an explanation from the Bai clan fort. If they continue to be so arrogant, then we won't hesitate to die. If we can't reason with them, then we'll use our swords to do the talking. If we're not as good as them, then we'll die in the Bai clan fort. We'll use our blood to wake the world and let the imperial court know the hidden dangers of the heroes of Tianyuan. He put away his long sword and bowed deeply to the audience. So, brothers, let us fight to the death for the country, for the people. Sun Lang looked at Hero Yang's performance with a serious expression. What a good trick. I take back my words. This rhythm is a little interesting. So, this Hero Yang must have eaten a leopard's guts to change the topic to the entire Tunyuan meritorious officials group. Obviously not. He must have been ordered by someone else. So, Sun Lang blinked his eyes. When he heard Hero Yang's slogan, "Let us fight to the death for the country," he suddenly waved his fists. Using the hot-blooded and passionate voice of an inexperienced young man, he shouted, "A dead country! Dead country! Dead country!" His voice was mixed with inner energy, so it could leave a deep impression in people's hearts. Some soul assimilation techniques used sound waves to activate people. When the people around heard the slogan, some of the more cultured people thought, "Oh, this saying is very cool. Dead country, how heroic. It's like a hero from ancient times." So they were slowly moved. They waved their fists and shouted, "Dead country! Dead country! Dead country!" As if it was contagious, everyone was conquered by this simple and somewhat emotional slogan. More and more people joined the group. In Jinyuan Town, a town about 40 to 50 miles away from the Bai clan fort in Sichuan, a group of martial artists gathered illegally and waved their fists, shouting exciting slogans. "Dead country! Dead country! Dead country!" Sun Lang couldn't help but laugh. Chapter 655. Wow, I've really become a streamer. Sun Lang couldn't help but laugh. The reason was simple. The pronunciation of dead country in Japanese meant very powerful. In the environment of the dirty cultural invasion of Japan, it had gradually become a popular phrase in the Chinese online world, especially among the otakus. Basically, it was used to express surprise at a very powerful person or thing, and it was mostly used to maliciously act cute. Therefore, in today's situation, it was completely reasonable and extremely appropriate for thousands of martial artists to express such surprise at Hero Yang, who was crazily leading the rhythm, like a group of otakus supporting their idol. Tenosi, Sun Lang burst into laughter. But what was more sad was that although he did such a thing, no one could understand the joke, no one got the fun of it, and no one laughed heartily because of the successful prank like him. They only knew that dead country was a heroic slogan full of tragedy and heroism, but they didn't know that this pronunciation had other meanings. No one understood and understood. This thing was destined to be one of many things that Sun Lang did to amuse himself in this world, and no one could share his joy. He could take this thing back and tell Yin Luo and Chow Patao. He knew that the girls would also show gentle smiles and find it interesting, but they would never get the same joy and pleasure as him. Because they didn't understand, that's all. And they smiled because no matter what Sun Lang said, they would smile in the earth-shattering slogan of dead country. The smile in Sun Lang's eyes slowly disappeared, and he sighed silently. No one could share his joy, but a sharp light flashed in his eyes. There must be one other person who could understand this joke besides himself. In other words, there was no better greeting and reminder than this matter reminding her that, I'm here, I'm here. Sun Lang quietly retreated. His figure changed nimbly and quietly blended into the crowd. Hero Yang on the stage felt a little complicated. How should I put it? If you plan something very carefully and flawlessly, when something unexpected happens, you will be at a loss. Yang Tian-du heard the tsunami-like dead country from the audience, and he felt quite helpless. With his level of education, of course, he could tell that die for your country meant then die for your country. Logically speaking, he also felt that this slogan was very meaningful, but he kept feeling that something was not quite right. Hero Yang showed a gentle and humble smile while paying close attention to a certain direction below the stage. He heard clearly that the first cry of die came from that direction, but there were so many people below the stage. Even if he heard the direction, how could he lock onto a specific person in a split second? He thought about it and couldn't think of anything wrong with the phrase dead country. The meaning, right? It doesn't seem to be taboo. Am I thinking too much? Just then his ears twitched. Secret telepathy. Someone's internal telepathic telepathy. Whispering to Yang Tian-du. When Hero Yang heard this, his expression changed slightly. Change the original plan? In other words, they won't show up? What's wrong? Is it related to the sentence, just now? The original plan changed at the last minute, which made him a little dissatisfied. But even if he was dissatisfied, he had no right to bargain. What they said to do, he had to do. Therefore, he quickly went through his speech in his heart before raising his hands and shouting, Quiet, everyone quiet down. I want to let my brothers know that this Yang is not a mediocre person who only knows how to spoil the mood. The Bai family is a strong enemy, and we're going to do something big this time, but there is no need for everyone to worry too much. We are not going to destroy everything and throw an egg at a rock, a shill in the crowd said in a loud voice. We're not afraid. Even if the sky falls, there's a tall man to hold it up. Hero Yang's swordsmanship is superb and rare in the world. Even if we fight, you'll be the one to make the first move. Yang Tian-du laughed heartily when he heard that. Brother, you're right. Since this Yang has shamelessly fought for the position of the seniors, and since they're all otherworldly experts who gave way to me out of courtesy, allowing me, a layman, to be in the limelight today, then when the time comes, this Yang will naturally fight for the position of first. As long as this Yang is still standing, there's no chance for any of you brothers to make a move. There was another round of applause from the audience. In a lively and festive atmosphere, another shill with a loud voice shouted again, Hero Yang, what you said before, is there any good news? Hero Yang clapped his hands and said, That's right. Let me ask you all. That day in Huaichuan, Bai Yue killed people. His martial arts were strong and invincible. No one could stop him. How did he leave in the end? Some of the people in the audience said in their hearts, Nonsense. Of course that old bastard got the divine sword and then ran away satisfied. Otherwise, why the hell are we here? However, even more of the onlookers shouted loudly. It was a great hero who made a move and repelled that old thief. According to the testimonies of the survivors that day, there was indeed a man in white who descended from the sky and then beat Bai Yue so violently that the mountain almost collapsed. No one would believe this. What kind of joke was this? Bai Yue, the Gold Radiance Grand Sword Master, was beaten up by a man? How could there be such a fierce person? Who was he? The world's most powerful master? Otherwise, Bai Yue was a fake. But the survivors of Huaichuan believed it to be true. Those who were in Huaichuan that day, and those who went to Huaichuan to see the battle also believed it to be true. This was because the mountain pass of Huaichuan was still covered with messy traces of battle. Those traces could not be smoothed out by human strength. Ravines and gravel were everywhere, as if there had been an earthquake. Regardless of whether the audience outside believed it or not, those who had experienced the battle in Huaichuan believed it. And the person who planned all of this hoped that everyone would believe it. Therefore, this theory became the mainstream. A passerby who was interested in the battle had defeated Bai Yue. However, that person's martial arts were not that much stronger than Bai Yue's. The reason why he was defeated was largely because the Gold Radiance Grand Sword Master had already gotten the Divine Sword and was unwilling to continue fighting. If that was the case, the Gold Radiance Grand Sword Master being beaten up by a bug in his combat strength could be explained clearly. Listening to the noisy replies from the people below, Yang Tian-do revealed an excited smile and said loudly, "That's right, that chivalrous swordsman, that great hero, saved many people's lives at the critical moment. Everyone should be indebted to him. Since he was able to defeat Bai Yue, his martial arts are naturally very impressive. With his help, it will be easier for us to succeed, right?" Someone below the stage shouted, "But that great hero has never shown his face." Another person shouted, "Brother Yang, I know that you don't speak empty words. By saying this, does it mean that—" Yang Tian-do laughed and said, "Yes, Brother Zhai knows me well. I want to let everyone know that the great hero who defeated Bai Yue has arrived at Jinyuan." As soon as this was said, the crowd was in an uproar. Sun Lang hid in the crowd and narrowed his eyes. He looked around and saw that no one had noticed him. Did that mean that it was nonsense? Was that his response? Naive. Let's see what tricks he can play. He even had a malicious thought. What if Yang Tian-do cupped his hands and said that the great hero was below the stage and asked him to show himself? Then he would raise his hand and throw a can of food at him. What would happen then? At this time, the crowd below the stage was in a heated discussion. Many people shouted, "Where is this great hero now? Great hero Yang, quickly ask him to come out and meet us." Yang Tian-do smiled awkwardly and cupped his hands. He said, "Everyone, please calm down. Look, after that great hero defeated Bai Yue that day, he also did not show himself. With his martial arts skills, he's definitely one of the most powerful people in the world. A martial grandmaster like him wouldn't like to see ordinary people like us. However, he has already agreed to lend us a hand when we go to the Bai clan's castle the day after tomorrow." Sun Lang was stunned for a moment and smiled slightly. Oh, Moses Roy. The crowd below the stage was in a mess. After hearing this, everyone could not sit still. Some were excited, some were curious, and some were suspicious. Everyone looked at Yang Tian-do and voiced their opinions and questions. However, Yang Tian-do could not answer them one by one. Great hero Yang even felt that his balls were hurting. This was not the script that they had discussed at the beginning. Why did they suddenly change their minds? It was not appropriate to change the plan in a hurry. It would cause endless trouble and easily reveal flaws, just like now. Unfortunately, he was not qualified to say anything. Since they had changed their minds, he had to continue and make up a story. As he asked everyone to be quiet, he answered a few questions that were asked loudly, such as where the great hero was, what he thought about this matter, what he would do, and so on. He probably said that the great hero was a righteous man and did not want to become famous or ask for anything in return, and so on. After that, great hero Yang decisively threw the blame away. He had been leading the momentum for so long and made such a long speech. It was time to give the other great heroes some time to build up their reputation. After all, the representatives of the various sects also had to say something to express their respective sects' attitude towards this matter. This was also part of the topic. Yang Tian-do hurriedly got off the stage after getting rid of the blame. With a decent smile on his face, he walked towards the resting area at a moderate pace. He was refined and courteous, and his smile was like a spring breeze. He was different from the heroic hero on the stage who was in high spirits. It was as if he had just done a little bit of work. Sun Lang watched Yang Tian-do's figure and quietly moved in his direction. Chapter 656. Yang Tian-do, Hero Yang. Sword Master Tianxin, a talented scholar who excelled in both the pen and the sword. He was a master of swordsmanship and had left many legends in Jianghu. He had been famous for 10 years and had many close friends, as well as many lovers. Lovers. Forget it, it's all the same anyway. His romantic affairs were as numerous as his heroic deeds. They were spread throughout Jianghu, and many people took delight in talking about them. Countless Jianghu children regarded him as their idol. Boys wanted to become adults like him. Girls wanted him to turn them into adults, and a small number of boys also hoped that Hero Yang could turn them into adults. In short, his reputation was very high, and he had a lot of fangirls and fangirls. That was why he was able to become the MC of the Huichuan Avengers Alliance's swearing-in ceremony. Although it was partly due to the historical process, his personal efforts were also very important. That was why he had announced his anti-corruption speech in front of the crowd. The people of the empire must be wary of the big tiger hidden among the heroes of Tianyuan. It was obvious that this speech, which had been written for a long time, was about to grow wings and spread to the entire empire. Hero Yang's reputation would also reach another peak after the Huichuan massacre and the Bai family fort incident. After all, he was the leader of the opinion and the representative of the people's will. Even a few idiotic college students could become the favorites of politicians and guests of honor. Hero Yang was even more so. But tonight, when Hero Yang was about to reach the peak of his life, he encountered a very funny and strange thing. Hero Yang, who was a master of martial arts and swordsmanship, was put in a gunny sack. It was just like how street gangsters would kidnap people. First, he was beaten to the point where he couldn't tell north from south. Then, he was put in a sack and carried away. He didn't make any noise, and no one noticed anything. Even with Hero Yang's martial arts and swordsmanship, he could not resist at all, because the person who put the gunny sack on him was not someone he could resist. Sun Lang hummed a little tune as he dragged the sack monster in his hand and happily walked down the dark path. He seemed to be in a good mood, probably because he had once again enjoyed the joy of playing alloy trafficker. Sun Lang whistled as he listened to the commotion from a block away and looked at the flames burning in the distant darkness. He then glanced at Yang Tiandu, who was wrapped in a gunny sack. It took some effort to catch this bastard. After all, the speeches given by the various sects during the heroes' assembly were long and smelly. It was even more long-winded than the speech given by the principal during the teachers' and students' assembly. With Sun Lang's patience, he would not be able to wait until the assembly was over. However, he would not be able to directly kidnap Yang Tiandu after all. After Yang Tiandu stepped down from the stage, he gathered with a group of martial artists who seemed to be gold-named elite monsters and talked about this and that. Everyone was watching, and the place was heavily guarded. There was no chance for Sun Lang to take action when he was alone. Although it was possible to directly rush in and snatch her away, the commotion would be detrimental to the subsequent arrangements. Secondly, it was because it was too boring. However, Sun Lang was very experienced in sneaking around and stirring up trouble. His theoretical knowledge was inherited from Earth. Whether it was the bald man who repeatedly killed people with barcode patterns, the flashy Italian horse stud cannon, or the one-eyed monster who could fly from the tail of a cardboard box, these strange people had taught Sun Lang a lot of useless experience. However, once Sun Lang obtained a cheat called the Peerless Martial Arts, all of these experiences became very useful. What should he do when the enemy was heavily guarded? Of course, he had to make some noise to attract their attention. The best way was to use canned herring. If one canned herring was not enough, then he would use 2 canned herring and explode them in the square. Perhaps it would cause a large-scale stampede that would shock the entire martial arts world. However, the problem was that there was only 1 canned herring left. He had to use it sparingly. This kind of precious and powerful item had to be saved for the Bai clan's assembly the day after tomorrow. Therefore, with the mentality of saving as much as possible, Sun Lang used the simplest and crudest method, setting fire. Setting fire was a technical job. After all, Jinyuan was only a small town. There were many wooden houses. If one was not careful, the fire could easily spread and burn dozens of household registers. However, Sun Lang was not alone. He had many helpers in Jinyuan. This town was the closest settlement to the Bai clan's fort. It could be said that half of the town's property belonged to the Bai clan. The Bai clan's property was his property, and the Bai clan's henchmen were his henchmen. Therefore, burn the F***CK. I'm happy. The person in charge of a large inn in town took on this glorious and difficult task. He was sent by Sun Lang to carry out the order to set fire. They were from Jinyuan and knew everything about it. They knew how to control the situation and achieve their goal by setting fire. Moreover, there was another benefit to using them. They would definitely report to Bai Jinming after the mission. Therefore, Bai Jinming would always know my movements. Humph, 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 humph. Therefore, once the fire was set, the people who had been arranged beforehand immediately started beating gongs and drums. The martial artists in the center of the town were instantly shocked, and there was a commotion. Some people acted as if they were facing a great enemy. Some immediately rushed to put out the fire, and some just watched. In the midst of the chaos, Sun Lang had already set his eyes on Hero Yang, who was completely unaware of what was going on. Bludgeon, gunny sack, taken away, not leaving a trace of cloud behind. For a short period of time, no one would pay attention to Hero Yang's whereabouts because many righteous heroes had gone to put out the fire. Perhaps Hero Yang was among them. Sun Lang carried Hero Yang all the way to a house arranged by the Bai family's henchmen in advance. He pushed open the door and entered. The people waiting inside looked at him vigilantly. When they saw Sun Lang, they immediately saluted him. "Master Sun, shopkeeper Wu asked us to wait for you here. The fire has been set, and now the brothers are all busy putting out the fire. No one was hurt, so you can rest assured." Sun Lang waved his hand. "There's nothing for you to do. Go do what you need to do." The two people in charge of receiving Sun Lang looked at each other and did not say anything. They cupped their hands and left. Before they left, they carefully closed the door of the courtyard. Sun Lang carried Hero Yang through the courtyard and into the central room. He threw the gunny sack man on the ground and opened the gunny sack. The elegant and handsome Hero Yang was lying on the ground without a trace of elegance. He looked very miserable, and he did not have the elegant demeanor that would captivate thousands of ignorant girls. Mother asterisk Kerr. Does this guy have a professional stylist and makeup artist? Why does he look so handsome? Sun Lang looked at Yang Tiandu on the ground and thought of this person's erotic deeds. Jealousy rose in his heart. Mother asterisk Kerr. I'm still struggling in the early stages of socialism. You dare to take big steps into communism? You're a rebel. The lights in the room were lit, and a row of torture instruments of different shapes were neatly arranged on the wall. They had prepared everything for Grandpa's Sunday. In addition, there was a pot of wine and a few dishes and pastries on the table. It seemed that they wanted Grandpa's son to have a relaxed and leisurely intermission after a tense and exciting exchange. How thoughtful, as expected of an aristocratic family. Even the dog they raised was so considerate. Sun Lang picked up the pot of wine and planned to pour it on Yang Tiandu's face to wake him up. But the next moment, he thought of an even better idea. Mother asterisk Kerr, who let you have love, who let you have fangirls, who let you have no self-respect. You're not a virgin at such a young age. TSK, TSK, TSK. Putting down the wine, he took out a small yellow can and gently squeezed it. The tightly sealed can cracked open a small crack. Sun Lang held his breath and put the can of herring to Yang Tiandu's nose. What? Let him smell it? Picture. Sun Lang was such a forthright man. How could he be so stingy? Such a good thing. How could he just let him smell it? Using his internal force, a drop of yellow crystal liquid seeped out of the crack. Then, under the influence of gravity, it turned into a perfect bead and fell into Yang Tiandu's upturned nostrils. It cleared the nose and cleared the brain. This drop of liquid containing the essence of evil in the world fell into Yang Tiandu's nasal cavity and instantly had an effect. Yang Tiandu's body immediately arched. He felt a suffocating force. He desperately breathed, but the situation was getting worse. He struggled with all his might, like a fish on the shore. He frowned and made a series of inexplicable low cries. Why do I feel like I've seen something incredible in my dream? Yang Tiandu opened his eyes abruptly. That pair of eyes that seemed to have seen through the vicissitudes of life and seemed to have seen through everything in the world were now filled with instinctive fear and pain. He breathed hard and sneezed with all his might. He even dug his fingers into his nostrils without caring about his image. He worked even harder than he did when he was trying to pick something. He didn't care about anything else. He didn't care about his current situation. He didn't care about why he was unconscious. He didn't care about who kidnapped him. Yang Tiandu was acting according to his biological instincts. At this moment, he just wanted to get that damn thing out of his nose. Get out, get out. Heavenly Queen of Earth. What is this thing? Sun Lang looked at Yang Tiandu, who was kneeling by the table and digging his nose crazily. He kindly handed over the wine pot on the table and warmly said, "Don't panic, don't worry. Come, use this to wash your nose." This voice was like the sound of nature. Yang Tiandu immediately reached out and grabbed the pot of wine. He pointed the mouth of the pot at his nose and raised his head to pour it down his nostrils. The Bai family's henchmen are considerate and sensible. They have prepared good wine and food here for Master Sun to enjoy. Master Sun is the family's honored guest. How can you use the shop's village mash to show respect to him? Naturally, you have to use a fragrant and mellow wine with a lingering taste. So the 40 to 50 degree wine drew a beautiful arc, like a clear spring from heaven, and poured into Yang Tiandu's nostrils. Sun Lang breathed a sigh of relief as Yang Tiandu crazily rolled around. Ah, revenge has been taken. This is the end of a winner in life. Chapter 657. There was no doubt that Sun Lang hated violence. He was also very kind and soft-hearted. He could not bear to see blood and did not like to play torture. That was true. He was so good at martial arts, but he was used to using non-violent and gentle means to solve problems. Such a person could be called a good person who had broken away from vulgar interests. For example now, he had put Yang Tiandu in a gunny sack. Of course, he did not use the identity of a pure man to punish the playboy scum with the flames of justice. He was here to do business. Combined with Yang Tiandu's enlightening speech, this person had expanded the scope of the Huichuan murder case and directly pointed his sword at the Tianyuan Meritorious Officials Group. His sinister intentions were obvious. Even if a so-called famous hero ate the guts of a leopard, he would not dare to provoke the entire Tianyuan martial artist group. In other words, someone must be instructing him. He was just a tool, a mouthpiece, an agent, and a knife. That was all. Since he was a dog, he must know something. But here came the problem. If he asked him nicely, Yang Tiandu would not cooperate. According to the usual script, if the target refused to cooperate, he would have to use the legendary torture to extort a confession. If Hero Yang had been a woman, it would have been fine. But when it came to the efficiency and speed of interrogating women, if Sun Lang claimed to be second, no one in the world would dare to claim to be first. It was not that he was bragging, but he could even make a girl he had never met completely collapse her defenses within 3 minutes, and she would unreservedly reveal any secret she knew to him, all because of his magical hands. But Yang Tiandu was a man. If he followed the normal procedure, he would have to play some bloody games that were not suitable for children, such as mashing the butthole, roasting the bird over fire, and the unfinished love between a man and a dog. Well, it was too cruel, too violent, and too bloody. Sun Lang was such a soft-hearted person. How could he do such a terrible thing? That was why he used such non-violent and gentle means in the hope that the matter could be resolved peacefully. Sun Lang looked at Yang Tiandu, who was twitching on the ground, and smiled. "Do you have a deep impression of it? Do you want to try again?" When Yang Tiandu heard this, his body subconsciously trembled. Previously, when the fine wine was poured into his nostrils, it made him feel good again. However, the strong smell of the wine and the subsequent evaporation of the alcohol had finally dispelled a little of the deadly smell. When he realized that he had been played, he immediately flew into a rage and struggled to fight Sun Lang with all his might. In the end, he was kicked to the side. The difference in strength was like a bucket of cold water poured over his heart, making Hero Yang realize the terrible situation of being a fish on the chopping block. He looked at Sun Lang with a hint of fear in his eyes, but his attitude was still very intense. "Sir, which path do you belong to? What enmity do you have with me? Is there some kind of misunderstanding? Sun Lang said coldly, cut the crap. I'll ask, and you'll answer. Where is the great hero who defeated by Yue? Yang Tian-du said decisively, Your Excellency's martial arts are amazing. Could it be that you are excited by the sight of a hunter and want to exchange blows with that senior? Please forgive me for refusing. That senior thinks highly of me, so he told me his whereabouts. I promised him that I would never reveal any information about him to outsiders. Even if you torture me to death, I won't say a word. Although he was battered and exhausted at the moment, as he spoke, that awe-inspiring righteousness returned to his face. Sun Lang nodded and said, Your acting is not bad. With a bang, Hero Yang's head was pressed onto the table. Yang Tian-du's voice suddenly rose by 8 pitches. His voice was stern as he said, Friend, leave a way out for others in the future. There are thousands of Wulin heroes outside. My disappearance will soon be discovered. No matter how high your Excellency's martial arts are, can you block the attacks of thousands of Wulin heroes? Can you block the pursuit of dozens of first-rate experts? Sun Lang smiled. He changed his nostrils and dripped a drop of hell's essence into it. I can. Ow, ow. Hero Yang was rolling on the ground like a wild dog that had escaped its leash. His exquisite and expensive clothes were dirty. Snot and tears were flying all over his face. He kept sniffling and scolding. You are more vicious than the people of the devil sect. A warrior can be killed, but not humiliated. Sun Lang stepped on him and said indifferently, A lackey still has the face to call himself a warrior? Yang Tian-du couldn't move, but he kept sneezing. He screamed and dug his nose. He screamed, Devil! You devil! I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. Sun Lang smiled and said, There's a water tank outside. There is water in the tank. If you answer my question, I will let you go and wash your nose. Yang Tian-du screamed, Let me go and wash first. Let me go and wash first. Sun Lang kicked him so that he was facing up. He picked up the wine jug on the table and poured the rest of the wine into it. Then I will let you wash again. Wah, 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 wah. Those who heard were sad. Those who saw were crying. After another round of devastation, Hero Yang shrunk to the side like a little wife. He looked at Sun Lang, his eyes full of fear and panic. Sun Lang sat on the table, picked up peanuts, and stuffed them into his mouth. He chewed on them and made a crunching sound. The fried peanuts were not bad. We have one night to kill, Sun Lang said to Yang Tian-du. There are many more tricks. You could try them one by one. Yang Tian-du rubbed his nose and shivered. He didn't say anything. Sun Lang looked at him and said, I thought that heroes were all people of noble character and unquestionable integrity. Maybe there really are such people in the world, but it's not you. I know that you're not that kind of person with a hard bone. You look for shills, you hire water armies. You know how to curry favor, you're very good at showing off. You seem to have a very thick thigh. You should be the kind of smart person who can seize the opportunity. And smart people are all sensible. Yang Tian-du didn't dare to look him in the eyes. That's true. I didn't know much about the martial arts circle before. It seems that I was obsessed. The martial arts world is also a martial arts world. Everyone is the same. Every circle is the same. There will always be more idiots than smart people, and there will always be fewer tough people than soft people. Every circle is the same. Everything is foul. There will always be more ugly and hypocritical things than beautiful things. Sun Lang looked at Yang Tian-du and said, Let me ask you one more time. The hero who defeated by Yue, where is he now? Hero Yang looked at Sun Lang and said in a trembling voice, I really can't say. Sun Lang interrupted his pleading. Can't or don't dare? Are you saying that the hero doesn't exist and that you made it up? Yang Tian-du immediately denied. No, it's not me. Sun Lang said sharply. If it's not you, then it's someone else who made it up? Yang Tian-du said anxiously. No. Sun Lang's speed of speech also became faster. No? Then it's fake? Who pretended to be the hero? Who would do such a stupid thing? Hero Yang's face changed again. He stuttered, No. Sun Lang grabbed the plate full of peanuts and threw it. A series of explosions sounded in the air. It was the sound of peanuts hitting the wall. It was a series of explosions that sounded like a rainstorm. Yang Tiandu was known as Sword Saint Tianxin and was very famous. Although a large part of his fame came from hiring people to create hype, he still had real skills. There were legends of flying flowers hurting people and making swords out of leaves, but he had never thought that a person could hit a plate of peanuts with the effect of pear blossom rain needles. He could feel the force of the peanuts hitting the wall. He could feel the powder from the wall falling on his body. The hundreds of peanuts were continuously hitting the wall around him. Each of them was so powerful that they could easily crush his head. However, each of them avoided his body and did not hurt him. Instead, they exploded very close to him. He screamed, "No, no, I'll talk, I'll talk." Yang Tiandu was frightened. He had never been a bold and unyielding person. Jianghu was also a circle of people. Swordsmen were not all true swordsmen. Heroes were also people. However, before he could give in, he felt a sharp pain in his head. He was grabbed by the hair and pressed against the wall. That terrifying person's face was just inches away from him. Sun Lang said coldly, "What are you talking about? Continue lying? How come I didn't know that I came to Jin Yuan and promised to help you?" Yang Tiandu was shocked when he heard that. He was almost suffocated by the last sentence. Then, he was filled with endless fear and panic. Sun Lang's tone revealed the murderous intent of Sun Ran. "You got guts. How dare you spread false information and pretend to be me?" He did not hide his murderous intent. It was as if there was a sharp sword hanging over his head that could take his life at any time. At this point, Yang Tiandu's mental defenses were completely broken. He screamed, "It's not me. It's not me. It's the people from Tensei province who told me to do this." After shouting these words, Hero Yang's entire body collapsed. Sun Lang let go of his hand and said calmly, "I told you you're not a tough guy. The bones of opportunists have always been soft." Yang Tiandu leaned against the wall and gasped for air. Cold sweat dripped down his face. Sun Lang said calmly, "It's still the same. I ask and you answer. Why do the people from Tensei province pretend to be me?" Hero Yang sounded like he was about to cry. "I really don't know. Why would they tell me this?" Sun Lang asked again, "What's your plan?" Yang Tiandu said in a trembling voice, "The plan has changed. The original plan was that person who pretended to be you would appear at the venue under my guidance and introduction to intimidate the crowd. However, for some reason, the plan was changed at the last minute." "You know what happened after that?" Sun Lang was stunned. He nodded and said, "She acted quickly. So where are they now?" Chapter 658. Thinking about it carefully, it was indeed reasonable. If it was Empress, hearing the extremely strange dead country, she would definitely have reacted immediately. Sun Lang had already arrived. Therefore, it was natural for her to change the plan in a hurry. After all, if they were to stick to the original plan under such circumstances and let the senior who defeated by Yue show up, what would they do if the senior was suddenly killed by the sneaky old man hidden in the crowd in front of everyone's eyes? Interesting. Although I used the dead country joke to tell that woman that I was already here, I didn't expect her to arrange such a boring plan. She actually found someone to pretend to be me? Sun Lang smiled and asked, "Then where are they now?" Hero Yang was already a broken jar, so he might as well stay single to the end. He wasn't a man of steel, and his psychological defense was easily overwhelmed by fear. This was the common characteristic of opportunists and smart people. But he still showed a difficult expression and said in rapid succession, "It has always been them looking for me, or secretly calling me out, or directly using secret voice sending. I have never had a way to contact them." Sun Lang stared at him for a moment and asked again, "You said that when you were on stage, someone used secret voice sending to you. Who was that person?" Yang Tiandu immediately said, "His name is Li Shu. He is a general of Tensei province. You should know." Sun Lang suddenly realized, this idiot is also here. Then where is he? Hero Yang shook his head blankly. "I don't know. At that time, he used secret voice sending to tell me to change my speech. These days, he has been in charge of contacting me, sometimes by my side. In the name of protection and assistance, he is actually monitoring me. His martial arts are very high, and he is also very cunning and suspicious. His words also show that he looks down on me. I am very angry, but I can't do anything to him. When I just got off the stage, I couldn't find him. He was originally at the pergola. Slipped away, Sun Lang said lightly. That kid ran fast. The people of Tensei province would slip away. In fact, it was expected. By now, the imperial court and the heavenly policy palace must have realized the key point when they played against Sun Lang, and that was that this fellow's martial arts were ridiculously high. They could only win against him with their wits and not brute force. The so-called wisdom was a conspiracy, a trap, a calculation, and borrowing strength to fight strength. All wisdom had to follow the premise, and that was to avoid direct contact with Sun Lang as much as possible. For example, today, if Empress dared to openly confront Sun Lang, then Sun Lang could slap her to the ground and drag her away. What the F*** was she trying to win with wisdom? Li Shu immediately ran away, probably because he had also received instructions. He was a famous general of Tensei province, a capable and valiant general of Empress. He was born in the Tianyuan Martial Merit School, and his military achievements were also extraordinary. If he met Sun Lang here, then it would be terrible. Sun Lang would definitely greet him with a smile and then punch him in the head. And it wasn't just Li Shu. The high-ranking officials of Tensei province who had recently infiltrated Jinyuan town might have all slipped away at this moment and retreated. Faced with such an unreasonable and unscrupulous madman, any rational person would choose to temporarily avoid the spearhead. Sun Lang understood this point and showed a disdainful sneer. You're so focused on your head again. This woman, after so many years, you still haven't made any progress. He looked at Yang Tiandu and asked, how many people like you are in your Avengers Alliance? The kind that accepted a deal with a friend from Tensei province. Yang Tiandu thought carefully and then said uncertainly, as far as I know, there are at least 5 people. As for the others, I really don't know. This is Tensei province, so there must be a lot of backups and spies. Sun Lang said again, if Tensei province wants to find someone to pretend to be me, then they must have instructed these people in advance to build momentum and collude with each other. They should have pretty much laid the groundwork, right? Hero Yang didn't understand, but he still said, yes. Tensei province has made a lot of arrangements, including sending people to spread the news and inviting martial arts masters to come forward and talk about the Huichuan murder case. They also copied the testimonies of the people involved, wrote it on paper, and distributed it everywhere, or found scholars at the intersection to read it aloud. Sun Lang listened and nodded repeatedly. You've learned well, you've learned well. Hero Yang said again, so, tonight, many people are just curious, not suspicious. Many of them believe that there really is a great hero who defeated Bai Yu Wei. Now that he had calmed down a little, his social skills as a famous martial artist recovered, and he flattered Yang Tiandu as if nothing had happened. However, Sun Lang didn't buy it. After all, this was the truth, and who would be happy with the truth? It was very normal, all right, just like when someone praised him for being handsome and charming, causing countless girls to fall in love with him. He would only smile faintly. This was confidence. After listening to Hero Yang's words, he pondered for a moment and said with a smile, this wedding dress is really beautiful. Yang Tiandu was stunned. Huh? Sun Lang glared at him. Don't smell yourself, it stinks. Go wash up outside and let everything go back to normal. Do you recognize it? Hero Yang hurriedly got up. Fortunately, his internal energy was strong. Although he had suffered a lot today, the damage he suffered was on the mental level, and his martial arts were not affected. He carefully looked at Sun Lang, then walked out of the house quickly and lightly. Soon, the sound of water splashing could be heard in the courtyard. As a martial artist idol, Hero Yang had a whole team under him. From public relations to packaging to career, everything was arranged for him in an orderly manner. The packaging team, in addition to hiring the Internet Water Army to hype up the competition, spending money to buy by Xiaoxing's ranking, and stealing the headlines of Wuling Chronicle, was also responsible for Hero Yang's personal image design. For example, they would rack their brains to design an image of Hero Yang as a dissolute wanderer in white, the kind that looked a little bad but was very good at work and was very dissolute, loyal, and had a bottom line. Then, they would write a script full of lines for Hero Yang to memorize before he could perform. They would even design Hero Yang's hairstyle and makeup. His fashion style was of utmost importance. Even this image design included movement and eye training. They had to ensure that Hero Yang could use the most handsome angle, the most gorgeous smile, and the most JoJo action to aim at the most worthy fangirl at the most important moment. Just like many celebrities and female anchors who had been in the industry for a long time, their makeup skills would also be maxed out. Hero Yang had been an idol for a long time, so he also knew some basic makeup and makeup removal skills. No one knew what method he used, but he was able to forcibly wash his nose until it was clear, and the embarrassing parts of his body were also cleaned up. Even the heavy smell of alcohol on his clothes was covered up by him using some unknown method. When Sun Lang expressed his surprise, Hero Yang just smiled and said, "I'm sorry, it's just a little trick. People like us who make a living in Jianghu, especially those who have a lot of admirers, have to pay attention to their personal image. Think about it. It's inevitable that there will be conflicts and friction in Jianghu. Sometimes we have to travel long distances and sweat all over. It's very smelly. What if the chivalrous girls who admire me smell it?" Sun Lang rolled his eyes and said, "Wow, you don't poop, do you?" Hero Yang actually understood his ridicule, and he suddenly felt a sense of resonance. It seemed that even in two different worlds, there were some hypocritical things that were similar. Hero Yang sighed and said, "That's right. I've been wearing a mask all these years. But then again, who doesn't wear a mask in this world? Our masks are just a little better looking, and we can wear them for a longer time. It's fine for me. But those fairies and saintesses, the more glamorous they look, the more tired they are in private." Sun Lang waved his hand and said, Okay, don't be long-winded." Hero Yang nodded like he was pecking rice and said, Yes, you're an otherworldly expert, so you naturally don't care about these trivial things." He paused for a moment and said carefully, "Then, I'll leave now." Sun Lang said with a smile that was not a smile, "Leave? Where are you going?" Hero Yang said sadly, "Of course I'm going to run away. Since you're here, how would I dare to get involved in this mess? And this time, I sold Tensei Province. If they know, they won't let me go. After thinking about it, I can only run away. Fortunately, after all these years of hard work, I have a lot of savings. Even if Tensei Province is very powerful, there are some places it can't reach." Sun Lang clicked his tongue and said, "You want to run abroad?" Hero Yang nodded. "My martial arts are not bad. Those barbarians welcome people from the Empire, especially martial artists from the Empire. If I go there with money, I won't have to worry about not being able to survive." Sun Lang smiled and said, "That's a good idea. But my friend, did I say you could leave?" Hero Yang's face suddenly changed. His legs went soft, and he knelt down, almost crying. You won't get anything out of killing me." Sun Lang glanced at him and said, "Target Ghost, are you in such a hurry to eat peanuts?" Hero Yang felt that his life was at stake. His brain turned quickly, and he immediately said, "Do you have any other orders?" Sun Lang smiled and said, "Nothing, but it's better to finish what you promised." Hero Yang was confused. "What is it? Look at how forgetful you are." Sun Lang rolled his eyes at him, then said with a smile, "Hero Yang, you bear the heavy responsibility of communicating with the great hero who defeated Bai Yue. Your friends must be eager to meet this great hero with great martial arts and a heart of justice. Don't you think it's not good for you to leave now?" Hero Yang blinked. He did not understand at first, but then his face slowly changed. He said with a trembling voice, Forgive me for being so bold, but Youth Sun Lang's smile was incomparably brilliant. "Why? Everyone admires me so much and even expects me to lead them to defeat Bai Yue. With such a loud voice, how can I bear to continue to stay behind the scenes and watch them be as confused as a small flame in the darkness? Of course I have to step forward and become an idol." At that moment, Hero Yang felt that the world was spinning. This lunatic, after discovering the Tensei province's plan, he stepped in and took over the plan that they worked so hard to set up. Chapter 659. Hero Yang's heart was trembling all the time. He couldn't help it. He was scared. This was too exciting, too nerve-wracking. He had never seen such a lunatic in his life, and he had never thought that he would be involved in such a ridiculous matter. He suppressed the fear in his heart as he walked out. A faint voice came from behind him. "Walk normally. What's wrong? Did you pick up a vibrator?" Yang Tian-du's body trembled. He didn't dare to look back. He said with a sad face, "Yes." He suppressed the fear in his heart and tried his best to look normal. He knew that his face was not looking good at this moment. If those experienced people saw him, they would definitely see through him. But he was really scared. He didn't take more than 2 steps before he said in a low voice, "You don't want to think about it? There has never been a situation in this world that is so difficult to solve. Tensei Province has been planning this for a long time. They have countless capable people, and many of them are wise. No matter how powerful you are still alone. As the saying goes, it's easy to dodge a spear in the open, but hard to defend against a stab in the dark. You are strong in martial arts. You should be hiding in the dark to intimidate them and wait for an opportunity to act, not jumping out into the open." Sun Lang, behind him, laughed. "It's okay. I am strong in martial arts. I can dodge a stab in the dark. But I can't." Hero Yang roared angrily in his heart. Sun Lang said again, "I know what you were worried about, and I know that you were scared. But you brought this upon yourself. Who told you to hug Tensei Province's thighs? It's not easy to be a dog of Tensei Province. Since you are on the side of Tensei Province, you should be prepared to face strong winds. You spread false information about me, and now you want to just walk away? How can there be such a beautiful thing in the world?" Yang Tian-du laughed bitterly. There was no point in regretting it now. Moreover, the situation was stronger than the person, so there was no point in saying anything. Sun Lang said lazily, "So, there are 2 options. First, I'll shoot your head right now and end everything once and for all. Second, you have to cooperate with me and do a good job. Then, I'll forgive your offense and let you live. If you want to leave the country, I can arrange for someone to send you out. Even if you can escape now, you have to face the threat and pursuit of Tensei Province, right? There are risks as well." Hero Yang was silent for a moment and sighed. "I hope you can keep your word," Sun Lang said indifferently. "Actually, I'm too lazy to kill people. Believe it or not." Yang Tian-du was stunned for a moment before he slowly nodded and said in a low voice, a little. Sun Lang glanced at him. You have a story too?" Hero Yang sighed and said, "Yes. I know. Some things, you'll get tired of it. If you do it too often, you'll find it boring. For example, when I was making a living in Jianghu, I had a small reputation and was called a romantic scholar. Over time, people in Jianghu took delight in talking about me. The more they talked about it, the more ridiculous it became. There were even some young women in Jianghu who wanted to spend a night with me and were willing to sleep with me." He looked up at the sky, then shook his head and said, "I was really happy at first, but then I got sick of it. Those women, they either treated me as a useful human horn, something to brag about, or as a naive, silly girl who yearned for the world of martial arts. They were so naive and cute. No matter which one it was, I didn't want to touch them. I found it boring. I prefer to talk to them and tell them stories. If I could." When he said this, he suddenly couldn't continue, because he felt a murderous aura. The murderous aura was so strong that it was more real than when he was forced to confess. It was the kind of murderous aura that could almost make him wet his pants. It was the kind of murderous aura that wanted to cut him into pieces. Then he felt a cold and hard weapon on the back of his head. Sun Lang said indifferently, "I'll just kill you." Yang Tian-du exclaimed, "Why?" In short, Hero Yang was beaten up. Although it didn't hurt his muscles or bones, it was very painful. Yang Tian-du, who was being punished by justice, wanted to cry, but had no tears. He was afraid of Sun Lang's tyrannical power. He was angry, but didn't dare to say anything. After being beaten up, he still had to obediently work. While he was adjusting his breathing to relieve the pain in his body, he was puzzled. Why did he beat me? Is it because he can't stand this kind of messy relationship? Is he really that righteous? At this time, the fire was gradually being extinguished. The smell of smoke filled the air. This sudden fire caused the nearby residents to panic, and it also attracted the attention of the Jianghu people of Jinyuan. Various heroes from all walks of life surrounded the scene of the fire. Several famous heroes were investigating the scene and exchanging opinions. During this special period, anything would be very suspicious. They had to determine the cause of the fire. After Yang Tian-du arrived at the scene, he took a deep breath to calm himself down. Then, he pretended to be in a hurry and squeezed his way in. Everyone recognized Hero Yang. His speech had been in the limelight. A few heroes in the circle also recognized Sword Saint Tianxin. When they saw him, they were stunned. "Brother Yang, why are you so late?" Yang Tian-du had already thought of an excuse. He cupped his hands and said, "Everyone, I'm really sorry. I was evacuating the residence when I was suddenly summoned by my senior." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was first stunned, and then they were all shocked. Senior? To be able to make Yang Tian-du call him senior. Who else could it be other than the person he had just mentioned? An unnatural look flashed across one of the hero's eyes. He asked in surprise, "Senior? The hero who defeated by Yue?" Yang Tian-du secretly gritted his teeth. "F*CK, I'll go all out." He deliberately winked and then directly said, "Yes, when I was evacuating the people, I suddenly received a telepathic message from my senior. He said that the fire was unusual. He suspected that the Bai family's lackeys were deliberately causing trouble and asked me to inform everyone to be careful." Another person asked, "Did the senior catch the person who set the fire?" Hero Yang continued with Sun Lang's excuse, even though he didn't know what Sun Lang was planning. "No, the senior said that the person's martial arts were not bad, and that he was despicable. He took a child hostage to threaten us. The senior was careless and allowed him to succeed. In order to save the child's life, the senior had no choice but to let him go." That person was stunned for a moment, then sighed and said, "The senior is a man of his word. He would not break his promise to the despicable and shameless person." "What a master!" Yang Tian-du nodded in agreement. "He's a master after all. He's much better than us ordinary people." They spoke so loudly that the surrounding crowd could hear them. When they heard this, they were stunned at first, then began to curse. They said that the Bai family was shameless and that the old bastard was despicable for doing such a shameless thing. They didn't deserve to be martial artists, and they had also embarrassed the nobility of the Tianyuan dynasty. The chivalrous heroes exchanged glances with each other. If Jianghu's martial artists were categorized into different levels, then these chivalrous heroes were undoubtedly the best of the best. Jianghu was a place where everyone had to carry a beautiful sedan chair, and where chivalrous heroes would protect each other. These chivalrous heroes were all smart people. Even if some of them were not in cahoots with the Heavenly Policy Palace, they could vaguely guess that there was a huge mastermind behind the Bai Clan Ford incident. No matter what, it was always good to do the Heavenly Policy Palace a favor. Therefore, they very considerately cooperated with Yang Tian-du, who had sought refuge with the Tensei province. They didn't know that this person had already become a traitor. Someone thought, "Hey, this ruffian Yang has disappeared for such a long time, and the first thing he did when he came back was to call me a senior. He probably received orders from the Tensei province to continue his act. If that's the case, I'll form a good relationship with him. TSK, this guy is really shameless. He's even able to get close to the Tensei province." Therefore, this hero said deliberately, "Senior is so charming. It's a pity that I can't pay my respects to him." Yang Tian-du was secretly happy. He then said, he didn't like crowds before, so he didn't show his face. However, after hearing what I said in the square tonight, he was quite shocked. He also saw the chaos that had just occurred. He felt that if this continued, people would be stirred up and things would get out of hand. It might even hurt his friends and make his enemies happy. The hero, who was very cooperative, continued, "What do you mean?" Yang Tian-du shook his head blankly. Senior didn't say much, but I could see that he seemed to be hesitating and suspecting something. However, he didn't want to say it because he didn't have full confidence. He didn't want to frighten people and make everyone suspicious. These words caused a ripple in the crowd again. What does he mean? What is he hesitating about? What is he suspecting? What is frightening? What can be more frightening than the gold radiant sword, saint killing innocent people? Facing the pairs of questioning eyes, Yang Tian-du smiled bitterly in his heart. How the hell would I know? He just wanted me to say this. Who knows what he's planning? However, he definitely doesn't have good intentions. After messing up the Tensei province's plan, he definitely won't just play around. Yang Tian-du glanced at the crowd around him, and his heart trembled inexplicably. He knew that there might be spies from the Tensei province hiding in the crowd, hiding their backup plan. Perhaps at this moment, there was a pair of eyes full of malice looking at him. However, he remembered what Sun Lang said to him. With me here, no one will dare to do anything to you. As long as you do your job well, you can live. Yes, that scary guy is also watching me in the dark. It's really scary. Thinking of this, Hero Yang smiled bitterly in his heart. Sigh, I'll just listen to him for now. What else can I do? From his words, he seems to be at odds with the Tensei province, and the Tensei province seems to be plotting against him too. I just hope that this scary guy can really wrestle with the Tensei province. Wait, Tensei province. In a flash, an idea flashed across Yang Tian-du's mind. He seemed to have thought of a possibility, a very crazy and scary possibility. He seemed to have guessed Sun Lang's plan. No, it can't be this kind of thing. After all, he was the one who defeated Bai Yue. This was the truth. How could it be? However, no matter what, there was no turning back. Therefore, Hero Yang clenched his teeth and said softly, Senior said that he wants to meet my brothers and Reverend ZMO and the others. What do you think? Chapter 660. Hero Yang walked on a limestone road of Jinyuan town, his footsteps a little shaky. His surroundings were very quiet, because the people behind him were terrifying. Master Ji Ying from Sanskrit Temple, Shiman Qin from the Earth Extinction Saber Sect, Taoist Ziyin from the Martial Black Sect, Reverend Bai Dai from the Jinyang Palace, Elder Ji Yuan from the Pine Crane Sword Sect. A large group of experts from the pugilistic world followed behind him. They were all very skilled in martial arts, and their footsteps were very soft. The fear of being tailed was very great. Without a doubt, these people were all following him to meet an expert who was skilled in martial arts and had unparalleled benevolence. He was the great hero who had lent a helping hand during the Huichuan massacre and repelled the murderous demon. Oh my God, who can save me? In the blink of an eye, Yang Tian-du recalled the impressive might of that great hero. Because a quarter of an hour ago, he was being mercilessly ravaged by that person, to the extent that the 2 holes on his body were burning with a faint pain. Yes, it was his nostrils. When he thought of this, Hero Yang faintly smelled the stench of feces. With Sword Saint Tianxin's divine sense and spiritual sense, he had already felt many gazes on him along the way. The experts from the pugilistic world behind him would occasionally stare at him meaningfully. Hero Yang knew that these sly and suspicious old fogies were definitely muttering something in their hearts when he thought of this. He couldn't help but feel worried. This was because he had been forced into a corner. Under that fellow's inhumane torture, he had been forced to agree to a crazy plan. He had to accompany that madman and withstand the pressure of Tensei Province to take over the place, so would it work? Tensei Province's original plan was very simple. They would find someone to impersonate the expert who had repelled Bai Yue and have him lead the group. They would then be able to control the direction of the situation and guide the heroes. But the real person had come and beaten him up without a word. Then, he said, "You want to impersonate me? Why go through so much trouble? If I can do it, I'll do it." So would it really work? The public opinion of the Heavenly Policy Mansion had made that great hero into a hero who was powerful in martial arts, wise and benevolent. He was righteous and didn't fear power. He helped the weak and dared to draw his sword. For a group of people he didn't know, he challenged the powerful Golden Radiant Sword Saint. What kind of hero was this? He wasn't afraid of life or death. So, could it really work? He didn't even have to think about it. Sun Lang's appearance would immediately appear in his mind. After all, he had left a deep impression on Hero Yang. Hero Yang could imagine Sun Lang's wild laughter, Sun Lang's insidiousness, Sun Lang's moodiness, and Sun Lang's betrayal. He felt that all the words of violence, cunning, cruelty, and unreasonableness that existed in the world were completely applicable to this person. The beautiful words of chivalry, integrity, and kindness were simply not related to him at all. It could be said that other than martial arts, he had nothing to do with the image of a legendary hero who defeated Bai Yue. So, even if this guy jumped out and claimed that he was the one who defeated Bai Yue, would people really believe him? His appearance had nothing to do with a hero at all. Thinking about how he was currently leading a group of cunning and suspicious martial arts experts to meet Sun Lang, Yang Tiandu's balls hurt terribly. He even suspected that Sun Lang was hiding behind the door of the courtyard at this very moment, holding a thick rolling pin in his hand. Whenever a martial arts elder came in, he would knock them out. Whenever a martial arts elder came in, he would knock them out. Then, he would drag them all into the courtyard and use the inhumane torture methods that he had once used on Hero Yang to make these martial arts masters succumb one by one. Thinking about it, it was quite interesting. Feeling the burning smell of excrement in his nose, Yang Tiandu's eyes flickered. He cast a sideways glance at the benevolent-looking master, Ji Ying, walking to his left. This Sanskrit temple's monk cultivated meditation all day long, paying particular attention to character. His words were vague and tactful, and he loved to act pretentious. If this monk's nose was also dripped with that thing, what kind of reaction would he have? The ugly nature of human nature exploded in Hero Yang's heart. As he walked, his thoughts ran wild. Suddenly, Yang Tiandu's heart skipped a beat. He found that he had arrived at the place. Looking up, he saw that the place he had agreed to with Sun Lang was close at hand. It was an inconspicuous house on the east side of the town. God knows where this madman found this house. So, he had arrived. Yang Tiandu silently stopped and turned around. The martial arts masters following behind him also stopped. Taoist Zi Yin cupped his hands and said, "Hero Yang, have we arrived?" Hero Yang nodded his head. "Yes. This is the place where Senior is staying. Everyone, please wait for a moment. I will go and report." These martial arts seniors looked at each other and nodded their heads. "Brother Yang, please." As for what they were thinking, only the heavens knew. Yang Tiandu's heartbeat sped up. Now that things had come to this, he began to let his thoughts run wild. These old things were not easy to deal with. If that madman wanted to suppress them, it would not be easy. How could they respect him with that playful and impetuous appearance of his? Moreover, his temper was so bad that he would beat people up without saying a word. What if they fought later? Should I run or not? What should I do if I stay? Hero Yang was panicking, but there was nothing he could do. He braced himself and knocked on the door. He said in a low voice, Senior, the martial arts masters have arrived. There are no outsiders." Then he heard laughter coming from inside. "The door is not locked. Please come in." The 20 or so martial arts masters who came with Yang Tiandu were all startled. According to their past experience, as long as a senior master spoke, especially this kind of meeting for the first time, they would use their superior internal energy to achieve the goal of unknowingly showing off. This seemed to have become an established rule. This rule was to protect the interests of the majority of the people. Think about it. If you did not use your internal energy when speaking, it was not enough to intimidate people. How would people know if you were a master? Some people with poor eyesight might think that you are not a master and speak rudely to you. As a result, you beat them up. Wouldn't that be very tragic? Today you beat someone in the face. Tomorrow you meet a master who did not speak loudly and spoke rudely to him because he was not tall. If you ended up being beaten up, wouldn't that be very tragic? Therefore, to be reasonable, everyone came out to mingle in the martial arts world. First, face, and second, money. Life was not easy. This face was given to them by their parents. If they could not be beaten up, they would be beaten up. Therefore, remember, in the future, you must use your internal energy when speaking. You must speak loudly so that people who are listening know how much weight you have. Then they can decide whether or not to speak rudely. This can save a lot of unnecessary trouble. Therefore, it slowly formed an established rule in the martial arts world to protect the majority of the people from being beaten in the face by idiots pretending to be pigs to eat tigers. When acting tough, you must use your internal energy to shout loudly and pretend loudly. Pretend to be loud and clear. However, the senior who had repelled by Yue didn't seem to abide by the rules of the underworld. His voice was very flat, very ordinary, and not loud at all. There was no internal energy at all. It was very unreasonable. It made people unable to tell how high his level was, so it made people feel a loss. Hero Yang's heart went cold. Wow, are you really waiting behind the door with a rolling pin? You should at least use your internal energy to scare them and show them who's boss. Feeling the suspicious gazes behind him, Yang Tian-du gritted his teeth and pushed open the door to walk in. When the remaining martial artists saw this, they exchanged glances and entered cautiously. This time, they had agreed to follow Yang Tian-du because they believed in their own strength. After all, the 20 or so people here were all top-notch martial artists. Even a grandmaster like the 7 Luminaries Sword Saint would not be able to easily deal with their encirclement. Moreover, everyone's disciples were on standby in the distance. If there was a situation, they would rush over to help. With such a huge advantage, what was there to worry about? Let's see what you have up your sleeve. They entered in a single file. When they raised their heads, they saw Yang Tian-du's back. Sword Saint Tianxin was stunned. It was as if he had seen something terrifying, so he stopped in his tracks. The martial arts masters led by Master Jing also saw what Yang Tian-du saw from the back of Yang Tian-du. As a result, they could not help but stop in their tracks. They were already imagining what they would see when they entered. Perhaps the senior would have his back to them, looking up at the stars, leaving behind an admirable back view. This was also a conventional posture to show off. Perhaps he would sit in a room and drink a little, his movements natural and unrestrained. His posture was carefree, as if he was saying, "I'm an expert, so I'm a maverick." However, they had never imagined that the situation would be like this. This senior stood in front of the door in the courtyard with a smile on his face. He was waiting there like an ordinary person welcoming guests. This senior did not say anything pretentiously profound. Instead, he smiled and said, "My apologies for taking the liberty to invite all of you here. The room is small and cannot be squeezed. We are all sons and daughters of the Jianghu. There is no need to pay attention to false etiquette." This senior wore a white Western-style robe and had short hair. He looked very young. It was hard to imagine that he was the one who had defeated the Gold Radiance Sword Saint. However, this senior was still a senior. Even if he did not show off, even if he did not have the bearing of an expert, even if he spoke casually, even if he looked very young. However, he just stood there like an ordinary person. When his eyes swept over them, everyone's hearts trembled. They looked up to a tall mountain. In that instant, everyone understood one thing. The person standing in front of them represented a realm of martial arts that they would never be able to reach in their lifetime. He was a true grandmaster. The shock Yang Tian-du received was too great. He felt like he had seen a fake Sun Lang before, or maybe Sun Lang had split into two, or maybe he had inhaled that terrifying liquid before and was still in the illusion world. So what's going on with you? What's with this peerless aura of an expert? Why didn't you put on this face and ask me nicely before? If Asterisk King know how to say anything. Okay. Hero Yang was trying his best to flip the table in his mind when he suddenly saw Sun Lang looking over. Yang Tian-du felt his soul tremble. He could not help but bow and say in the most respectful tone, "Greetings, senior." Then he heard Master Ji-ing greet him, "Greetings, senior." Zisu by Dai, Saber Sect, Elder Xia, Monk Miao Wu, Sect Master Hua. These cunning, arrogant, suspicious, and intelligent people, at this moment, all of them involuntarily bowed and saluted him, calling him senior. Even if the person standing in front of him was unbelievably young, and some of their sons were older than him. However, their humble and respectful tone was so sincere. He heard Sun Lang's voice again. Everyone, there's no need to be so polite. Please rise." His voice was so calm, as if all of this was natural. With just a glance, he could make the famous heroes of the Jianghu bow and render the heroes helpless. Until today, Yang Tian-du still felt that this was just a legend. He slowly straightened his back and looked at the unfamiliar yet familiar Sun Lang in front of him. Suddenly, Hero Yang had an epiphany. Perhaps the legend made up by Tensei Province was true. This person who defeated Bai Yue was indeed a great hero. A great hero. Or perhaps he used to be. Perhaps that crazy plan could really succeed. Chapter 661. Bai Castle. After comforting his wife, who had been worried about him for the past 2 days, Bai Junming returned to his office. He sat in his study. The incense burner had been changed twice, the tea had been refilled 8 times, and the butler had served supper. Beef soup was simmering on the stove, ready to be eaten at any time. Patriarch Bai was still waiting. He received 4 reports, as well as a secret report. The 4 reports came from Jinyuan town. According to the reports of the people in charge of the businesses along the way, Sun Lang had entered the town and was actively taking action. For his first report, Sun Lang sent a horse and changed into the attire of a swordsman in the world of wanderers. He swaggered into the town and talked to the martial artists everywhere. He also asked to meet the people in charge of the Bai clan in Jinyuan town to ask about the situation. In the second report, Sword Saint Tianxin, Yang Tian-du, had given a reckless and daring speech. Sun Lang met with the person in charge of an inn and ordered him to prepare 2 clean rooms. One was near the town center, and the other was at the edge of the town. It would be best if there were few people and they were clean. Sun Lang then gathered people to help set the place on fire. The third report was that Jinyuan town was on fire. Sun Lang had taken advantage of the chaos to kidnap Sword Saint Tianxin, bringing him to a house near the center of the town to torture him. According to the report from the watchers, there were incomprehensible screams coming from the house. In the fourth report, Yang Tian-du regained his freedom and led Master Jiying, Dao Xian, and dozens of other Jianghu masters to the second room that Sun Lang had ordered people to prepare. The 2 sides met and had a secret meeting. The contents of the meeting were unknown because it was too difficult to eavesdrop. In addition, there was also a secret report that was delivered in the most secretive, safest, and fastest way possible. It was delivered to Patriarch Bai under the orders of Sun Lang. It was sealed with an intricate mechanism, and only Patriarch Bai had the key to open it. If it was opened with brute force, the letter would be destroyed by poison. It was the most secretive method of communication. The letter was written by Sun Lang. Sun Lang roughly described his actions and plans, as well as the areas where he and Bai Junming needed to cooperate. To put it simply, this audacious fellow had actually infiltrated the enemy's inner circle, forcibly squeezed out the arrangement in Tensei Province, and appeared as the hero who defeated Bai Yue, intimidated the heroes, and became their leader. In other words, he would build up his prestige today and tomorrow. Then, the day after tomorrow, he would lead the group of martial artists who had gathered at Jinyuan town to the Bai family fort to demand an explanation for the Huaichuan murder case. This was his plan. If he could establish his authority and become a leader, as long as he did it properly, then most people would believe his words and believe what he said. Then, if he cooperated with him from the inside, this matter would be easily resolved. After all, if the 2 leaders in charge of the dialogue were in cahoots, then there would be no losers in this game. The loser was someone else. That's right, it was Tensei Province. In the end, someone had to take the blame for the Huaichuan murder case. And since someone had to take the blame, why couldn't it be Tensei Province? Tensei Province was the one who had added fuel to the fire and blown the matter up. The reason Bai Yue had slaughtered those martial artists was ultimately because the imperial court's schemes had driven him mad, and this blame had been placed on him. Bai Junming carefully read this secret letter. As he read it over and over again, his forehead gradually broke out in cold sweat. Sun Lang's plan was simple and capable, but it was also fierce and insidious. During the confrontation the day after tomorrow, The two of them would work together to first wash away the suspicion of the Bai family, then gradually turn the spearhead to Tensei province and reveal that all of this was a scheme hatched by the Tensei province. Humans were creatures who believed themselves infallible. They were easily led and used. However, once the conspiracy was exposed, they would become even angrier and return double the anger to the mastermind of the conspiracy. Therefore, when they found out that all of this was a lie, that they had misunderstood the Bai family, that the Bai family had been wronged, and that the schemer behind all of this was the Tensei province who had conspired against the meritorious officials of Tianyuan with the intention of encroaching on the throne, what would happen? Bai Jinming could imagine what would happen after the plan succeeded. He also understood human nature, and especially understood these self-proclaimed chivalrous Jianghu people. They were hot-blooded, self-righteous, and felt that they stood on the moral high ground, so they were easier to incite and more likely to backfire. Cold sweat trickled down Bai Jinming's forehead. He was frightened, and he was terrified. He was not frightened by Sun Lang's evil scheme, nor was he frightened by Sun Lang's grasp of human nature. He admitted that this was an ingenious and insidious scheme that could kill two birds with one stone, but he was silent for a moment. Trembling, he took out a crumpled letter from the bottom of a pile of books. He saw this letter on the bed in his bedroom, and it had been delivered in the afternoon. When this letter was delivered, Sun Lang was still on his way to Jinyuan town, and his plan had not even been completed yet. Therefore, the content of the letter was so terrifying that he was extremely frightened. He unfolded the letter with difficulty and put it together with Sun Lang's secret letter. He looked at them over and over again, comparing them. It was like a precise and terrifying prophecy, like a terrifying and sinister scheme within a scheme. Putting these two letters together, it was extremely ironic. Bai Jinming exhaled slowly and said in a low voice, "It was completely predicted. No wonder you were schemed against back then. They had already set a trap for you." He looked at the two letters on the table. In Sun Lang's secret letter, his tone was very casual and self-satisfied, as if he thought it was very fun. The words he used were also very careless, without any literary talent. His plan seemed very beautiful, very executable, and very likely to succeed. It was also very effective, very efficient, and very profitable. He could achieve the best results with the least cost and the most effortless method. Yes, he could kick the reputation of Tensei province into the gutter, wash away all the injustice of the Bai family, and exchange it for the guilt and favor of the group of martial artists. How perfect. Unfortunately, the other letter had accurately predicted all of Sun Lang's plans, and on this basis, proposed the conditions in exchange of Tensei province. The words used were careful, the plan was rigorous, the promises were fulfilled, and the attitude was calm and calm. Every step was calculated accurately, and every bargaining chip and condition was impossible for Bai Jinming to refuse. Comparing the two, the difference was obvious at a glance, and the choice should also be obvious at a glance. The Hotu Empire had the general trend, the people's hearts were stable, and the country was as solid as a rock. The Tensei province had the full support of His Majesty. It was a very sincere condition and request. On the other hand, the exiled former marshal of the empire, alone, wanted to take revenge on His Majesty with his own strength. He was harsh and indifferent to the Bai family, often scolded and beat his father, casually mocked and ridiculed, and coveted the Bai family's property. Even with his promise and protection, the Bai family would only continue to fall, without any hope of revival. He was of no help to the future of the family, and had irreconcilable conflicts with his father, so he would almost certainly kill his father. In contrast, the promises of Tensei province were pragmatic, efficient, and sincere, making it almost impossible for him to refuse. Just like what was described in the letter, only a small sacrifice was needed. After the counterattack plan in Tensei province was completed, the empire must ensure the continuation and prosperity of the Bai family no matter what, because this was the general trend. The empire wanted to win the general trend, so it would definitely set the Bai family as a benchmark. Bai Jinming sighed silently. Comparing the two, There was no need to hesitate about the choice. He was the head of the Bai family and had taken over such a heavy responsibility from his father. In order not to let his father down, he was willing to do anything. He was Bai Yue's son. Now that his father was crazy, without dignity, and his life was not guaranteed, the prestige and honor of the past had disappeared with the wind. Now that his father was old, it was his son's turn to protect him. He was willing to pay any price for this. The man's eyes gradually became firm and indifferent. He picked up the letter that Sun Lang wrote to him. Although the tone was casual and there was no literary talent, the words were not ugly. Perhaps the word frame was ugly, but the words were not ugly at all. Every word seemed to be carved with a sword. The tip of the brush moved horizontally and vertically like a dragon or a snake. Between the lines, there seemed to be a magical power. One could even feel that these words were alive, as if they were flowing. Bai Jinming was also a martial artist, and he knew that this meant the supreme realm of swordsmanship. If he had received this letter in normal times, he would have been overjoyed and treasured it carefully, taking it out to study and speculate every day. Because this casual writing contained an extremely high level of swordsmanship. Sun Lang's martial arts were indeed at an unimaginable level. Good writing, good kung fu, but it was a pity. In this world, there were always some situations that couldn't be broken no matter how high one's martial arts were. There were always some things that couldn't be changed no matter how high one's martial arts were. Martial Jia, you were still tricked by Empress. What a pity. Bai Jinming unbuttoned his clothes, took out the heart protection mirror hidden in his inner clothes, and hid the letter close to his body, then covered it with the heart protection mirror. Then, he picked up the letter from Tensei province, removed the lampshade of the table lamp, and put the letter close to the candle flame. The flame lit up and illuminated Bai Jinming's face, making the face of the Bai family's patriarch look extremely ferocious. When all the flames turned into ashes and fell to the ground, Bai Jinming casually waved his hand, and the ashes all drifted to the small stove beside him. All traces of the letter were obliterated. Then, he called out Brother Qing. The housekeeper who was on standby in the next room quickly rushed over and bowed. Patriarch. Bai Jinming calmly picked up the brush and wrote a piece of paper. Then, he handed it to the housekeeper and said, "Recall all the people who have interacted with Mr. Sun along the way back to the Bai family fort. You're personally in charge of this. Make sure that Mr. Sun's identity is concealed. We will fulfill all of Mr. Sun's requests. Dispatch the most loyal servants to carry out his orders and plans. Also, tell our people that from now on, Mr. Sun's words are my words and Mr. Sun's orders are my orders. We will assist him with all our strength, and we will not hesitate to die." The housekeeper was stunned, but he still bowed and said, "Yes." Bai Jinming said softly, "Brother Qing, I know you're confused, but you'll know the truth soon enough. Right now, our Bai family has reached a critical moment. I hope that the day after tomorrow will be a good day." Chapter 662. The next day. There was only one day left until the day when all the heroes would gather at the Bai clan's fort. As usual, Xiaowei got up very early. She had maintained a very good work and rest habit since she was a child. The little minx was a good and disciplined child and did everything methodically. She sat in front of the large and luxurious dressing table, slowly braiding her black satin hair into a thick long braid and tucking it behind her head. There were a lot of rouge and face powder on the dressing table that she had never heard of before. Girls were naturally fond of beauty, and she also liked these exquisite cosmetics. But now, these things that girls liked the most could no longer attract her attention. She had something on her mind. The huge Western mirror accurately and perfectly reflected her image. The young girl's lips were tightly pursed, and a faint layer of worry appeared on her originally cheerful and beautiful face. Last night, she was moved by the deep father-son relationship between Bai Yue and Bai Yue. Her curiosity about her parents also rose, so she made a suggestion to Bai Yue. She wanted to use the Horned Tiger's innate ability to read minds to spy on the Golden Radiant Sword Saint Bai Yue's memories. If she could see Bai Yue's memories, she could not only learn about her parents, but also help Bai Yue remember something. This was obviously a good idea, to kill two birds with one stone. But before Bai Yue could respond to this proposal, it was vetoed by Big Sister Lu. She had never seen Big Sister Lu so angry. At that time, the sword spirit's anger shook her spiritual world. Are you tired of living? Bai Yue has been soaked in blood for decades. You, a little monster, dare to read his memories? Don't you know how to write the word death? The little minx was also very annoyed at that time. Ever since she had barged into the abandoned house filled with terrifying words, the waves in her heart had been increasing day by day. Usually, whenever she had free time, she would involuntarily think of that terrifying house. She always felt that she had overlooked something, and she even wanted to take a look at it again. But every time she mentioned this idea, the B*TCH personality would reject it without any explanation. After all, Xiaowei was also a little girl. She had a living body of flesh and blood and had thoughts, so she could be happy, angry, worried, and afraid. She had just become an adult and had grown up in the mountains, isolated from the rest of the world. She was as innocent as a child. Since she was a child, no matter how rational and sensible she was, there was a limit, especially when he was under a lot of mental pressure and was still affected by the strange illusion and inexplicable intuition caused by the abandoned house. In this case, the idea that she had boldly proposed was rejected by Sister Lu in the fiercest way, and the uneasiness and dissatisfaction that had been suppressed in her heart finally broke out. It was rare for her to get angry, and she had a big argument with the sword spirit through the spiritual link. However, in their contractual relationship, although she was the sword master in name, her strong and domineering personality always firmly held the initiative. Along the way, the sword spirit was always the one making the decisions. Therefore, even if they quarreled fiercely, Xiaowei's idea of reading Bai Yue's memories was eventually blocked. The little fairy sadly bid farewell to Bai Yue and returned to her room. She didn't talk to the sword spirit for the whole night. She didn't sleep well, tossing and turning. She even had several nightmares in a row. She felt very bad and uneasy, and she always felt that something big was going to happen the next 2 days. Sister Lu also seemed to be sulking with her. In the huge Bai castle, she had no one to talk to. She felt very wronged and helpless. She was full of worries and didn't know who to talk to. In this lonely state of mind, she couldn't help but think of Sun Lang, the man who was born as a hero of the celestial origin era. Even though he had been rejected and betrayed by the people who almost destroyed him, still lived freely in this world. Usually, he would laugh happily and live happily. This was undoubtedly a powerful man. Whether it was his soul or his body, the little fairy could not even imagine anyone who could defeat him. She thought of Sun Lang's heartless smile and the words that Sun Lang had said to her before. Therefore, she looked forward to Sun Lang coming back soon and talking to her for a while. Even if it was something insignificant, it would be fine. Even when she thought of his voice and smile, the uneasiness in her heart calmed down a little. She was thinking about when Sun Lang would come back. If he didn't come back tonight, he should be back tomorrow, right? What? I have to wait until tomorrow? She looked at Bai Zhenming in surprise. Even she didn't notice the deep disappointment in her voice. After breakfast, she went to find Bai Yue as usual. She met Bai Zhenming, who came to pay his respects. She saw the uneasiness and fatigue in Bai Zhenming's eyes. It seemed that Master Bai was also under a lot of mental pressure. From him, Xiaowei got a disappointing answer. Sun Lang wouldn't come back today. He would come back tomorrow after he finished dealing with the Bai Castle's affairs. Bai Zhenming looked at the girl's unconcealable disappointment and sadness. His heart was slightly moved. He was already in his 40s or 50s. How experienced was his eyesight? He could tell at a glance what was on this little minx's mind. It seems like this little girl has feelings for Sun Lang. Is there something I can take advantage of? Bai Zhenming was a little puzzled. Yesterday, he received the first letter from Tensei Province. The letter asked him to show his sincerity for cooperation. It was a trivial matter, so Bai Zhenming went to do it. He followed the instructions in the letter and casually revealed the fact that there was a demonic race military judge in his father's army. Sure enough, Xiaowei was very excited. Although Bai Junming didn't know what was going on, nor did he know why the Tensei province wanted him to do this, the dignified Tensei province definitely wouldn't do something without a target. He felt that this little minx was definitely an important chess piece. Therefore, he thought that the Tensei province would take further action or give further instructions on this matter. However, the letter that was full of countermeasures didn't contain any instructions about the little minx's actions. It was as if the Tensei province had forgotten about this small matter. This made Bai Junming very surprised. Did they not trust me? So, they sent someone else to do this? Or, is it not the right time? No matter what patriarch Bai guessed in his heart, he still had to act on the surface. He said to the disappointed little minx, "Mr. Sun is doing something important, so he can't come back immediately. He also asked me to pass a few words to you, so you don't have to worry." Hearing this, the little minx's expression changed. Then, she said softly, "I understand. This little girl really has some feelings for Sun Lang. Looking at her, I'm afraid she doesn't even know it herself." Bai Junming exchanged a few words with the little minx and chatted with his father for a while before hurriedly leaving. Today was the last day. Tomorrow was the moment to decide his fate. He had a lot of things to arrange and a lot of preparations to do. What's more, his father was still here. He couldn't stay any longer because he was afraid that he couldn't help but say something or do something. He couldn't say anything or do anything. He couldn't let anyone find any clues. All he could do was look at her a few more times, that's all. Fortunately, the man didn't have to say much. After sending Bai Junming away, Xiaowei sighed softly. She looked up and met Bai Yue's eyes. Old Bai whispered, "I didn't tell him. It was last night's proposal." Xiaowei wanted to read Bai Yue's memory. A cold snort sounded in her mind. Xiaowei smiled bitterly and whispered, "I'm sorry." Bai Yue shook his head. "It's okay. I thought about it last night. It's better not to do it. Although I can't remember the past, I know that it's a memory that makes me extremely painful and fearful. Even I don't want to remember it, so it's a very bad thing. How can I let you come into contact with her?" Pain and fear. The pain and fear of a 7 luminary sword saint. Xiaowei sighed softly. What kind of memory would make a hero like you feel pain and fear? Bai Yue couldn't answer her question accurately. He blinked and pondered for a moment. Although he had lost his memory, his spirit sense was still there. He could faintly touch that feeling. Despair. He murmured. It's like the whole world is bleeding, like the sky is falling. The little minx couldn't understand this. After all, she had never experienced this before. Never before. Bai Junming returned to the towering residence. At this time, the Bai clan castle was turbulent. The news spread like wildfire throughout the Bai clan. Tomorrow, a large group of martial artists would come to visit, saying that the ancestor had killed many people in Huaichuan. With the arrogance of the Bai clan's disciples, how could they take this matter to heart? Even if it was them, they would usually accidentally kill a lowly slave or accidentally kill someone while galloping on the street. At most, they would leave a slave behind to pay for their crime. Human life had long since become insignificant in their eyes. With the ancestors' martial arts, reputation, and status, killing a few Jianghu bandits was nothing. They thought it was a trivial matter, but they didn't expect it to escalate to such an extent. Now, the Bai clan could smell the unsettling atmosphere in the air. They realized that something big was about to happen, so everyone was in danger and had their own plans. Chaos was brewing and rumors were spreading. Bai Junming was well aware of all this, but he had already planned to use this opportunity to make the Bai clan rise from the ashes. As the saying goes, without destruction, there can be no construction. Moreover, since he had already made up his mind, he naturally had a fight to the death. Compared to the future of the Bai clan and his father's life, the current chaos was not worth mentioning, so he didn't have the time to pay attention to these details. At this time, he was quickly reviewing documents in the towering residence, issuing orders and making preparations as quickly as possible. There were many things to do, so he had to arrange everything flawlessly. After all, his opponent was that kind of monster. Even with the help of the Tensei province, He had to be extremely focused to deal a fatal blow. Sun Lang, you think that your martial arts are superior and that you are invincible, so I'm afraid that you have never placed me in your eyes. In your eyes, I'm nothing more than a cowardly and incompetent ant that you can easily crush to death. So you've never paid attention to my thoughts, right? So you've never thought that I would have the courage to betray you and take revenge on you, right? So your carelessness and underestimation of your enemy will lead to your failure. Just you wait. Chapter 663. Bai Jiming secretly gritted his teeth. He thought of everything Sun Lang had done. The threat to the family, the humiliation to his father, the contempt to himself, the tyrannical abuse of the Bai family, forcing him to bow and bend his knees. Who could endure this kind of treatment? The murderous intent in his heart was revealed. He exerted force in his hand, and with a snap, the brush in his hand had been crushed into 2 pieces. The housekeeper just entered at this time. He was slightly startled when he saw this, but then he immediately bowed his head and said, "Master." Bai Jiming restrained his murderous intent and put the broken brush aside. He glanced at the housekeeper he called Brother Qing. They were brothers and grew up together. Brother Qing was his most trusted assistant, but Brother Qing accidentally saw the scene of him crushing the brush. Would he associate it with something? Thinking of this, Bai Jiming was shocked, and then he smiled bitterly in his heart. He was doing something extremely important. If he wasn't careful, his entire family would be doomed eternally. The things that had happened during this period of time had already made his nerves tense, to the point where he was jittery at the slightest sound and was in a state of panic. So much so that a small matter had made him suspicious of his foster brother. "I'm going crazy, but it doesn't matter. I just need to hold on a little longer." Thinking of this, he suddenly felt sad. Bai Jiming looked at the housekeeper in front of him and said calmly, "Brother Qing, how long have we known each other?" The steward was startled, and then his eyes revealed reminiscence and warmth. Replying to Master, "This lowly one was brought to your side by the old master when I was 5 years old. We've been learning martial arts and reading together. Counting the years, it's been 45 years. Bai Jiming sighed. 45 years. We are married and have children. We even have grandchildren." This sigh was very inexplicable. The housekeeper didn't know how to respond, so he just bowed and didn't say anything. Fortunately, Master Bai quickly restrained his sad mood. He knew that he didn't need to say anything. The housekeeper in front of him was the most loyal. For him, the Bai family was everything. There was no need to tell or entrust anything. He knew what he should do. So he smiled. "Brother Qing, what's the matter?" The housekeeper raised the thing in his hand. "I'm here to report to the master." In 2 hours, Mr. Sun issued a number of orders. The withdrawal of money and food, the mobilization of forces are all recorded in detail here. Bai Jiming took it and gave a quick glance. Just as he had been giving orders and dispatching people last night and today, Sun Lang had not been idle either. Bai Jiming had already made up his mind to deal with Sun Lang. At the beginning, of course, he was on full alert, as if he was facing a great enemy. He had to study every order that Sun Lang gave him over and over again, fearing that the other party had some kind of scheme. However, a person's energy was limited. He also had to mobilize the huge forces of the Bai family to carry out preparations and arrangements. At the same time, he also had to suppress the obvious chaos in the castle and pacify the turbulent people's hearts. Therefore, he had to make a choice. In any case, he didn't have the time to carefully ponder the profound meaning of Sun Lang's orders. Coupled with the fact that he had just discovered the changes in his heart, Bai Jiming didn't have the time to think too much about it. He skimmed through the various arrangements Sun Lang had made and snorted disdainfully in his heart. It was nothing more than a cliché. It was nothing more than creating momentum, setting up a trap, and guiding public opinion. Sun Lang's brilliant plan was to cooperate with him from the inside and outside, to first wash away the suspicion of the Bai family, and then pour dirty water on the head of the Tensei province. In order to achieve such an effect, not only did he have to plant spies in advance, but he also had to prepare strong evidence that would make people speechless. All of Sun Lang's plans were to prepare for these two things. Bai Zhiming roughly glanced at the entries and orders. Humph, this meticulous arrangement is the bearing and ability of a famous general of Tianyuan. But what a pity. Your ideas have been seen clearly by the Tensei province. The more exquisite these arrangements are, the sharper the knife that will stab you in the future. You are digging a trap for yourself. Master Bai sneered in his heart. Then he put the report on the table and asked casually, Brother Qing has read these things in detail, right? Is there a problem? The butler said respectfully, I have read them all. With my poor eyesight, I really can't see any mistakes. Mr. Sun's meticulous thoughts and exquisite arrangements are really amazing. Bai Zhiming sneered in his heart again. Then he said indifferently, In that case, I will have to trouble Brother Qing to send the next report. Speaking of this, Bai Zhiming seemed to have thought of something and asked again, Has Mr. Sun taken any action? Action? The butler was stunned at first, but then he understood Bai Zhiming's meaning. He replied, No. Hiro-san has been staying in the room, prepared for him. He has only dealt with Ji Ying of the Sanskrit temple. Other than that, there has been no abnormality. Bai Zhiming nodded and muttered to himself. All of the orders he gave to the Bai family were taken over by the elite members of the Bai family. They were loyal and devoted, and there would be no problems. In other words, Sun Lang's overall actions were under their control. As for Ji Ying and the others, with the Tensei province keeping an eye on them, I don't have to worry about them. In other words, Sun Lang did not send any information to the outside world. Well, that was to be expected. After all, he was a Grand Marshal. His martial arts were excellent, and his plans were flawless. He could solve any problem by himself, so he did not need any help. Moreover, there was only one day left. Even if he wanted to do something, it would be too late. Bai Zhiming smiled at the butler and gradually relaxed. In Jinyuan town, in a house at the edge of the town, this place had become a forbidden area, and the whole town was spreading a rumor that the great hero who had defeated Bai Yue lived in this place. The rumor became more and more intense. It was said that Master Ji Ying and the others had met with the senior last night, and both sides exchanged some opinions about the Bai family fort. Someone went to ask the people involved, and they all received positive answers. These martial arts heroes all humbly said that the senior was indeed a peerless master in the martial arts world, and that the Bai family fort was in the bag. Things were getting lively now. With so many reputable figures stepping forward to testify, it seemed like this matter was settled. The only thing that was not so stable was that the senior did not seem to like meeting people, so he did not appear in public. Everyone did not know what the senior looked like, and they did not know how powerful his martial arts were. Those who could not be seen were the most mysterious. The more the rumor spread, the more curious everyone became. Thus, discordant notes began to appear. Some people thought that Master Ji Ying and the others were deliberately mystifying things. Some of them felt that the so-called senior expert was a fake, someone who had added a special skill and was not very powerful. They felt that he was merely lucky to be able to defeat Bai Yue. Therefore, Monk Ji Ying and Yang Tian did not dare to let the so-called senior show himself in public. They were afraid that he would reveal any flaws and cause everyone's morale to drop. Seeing was believing, so they wanted to see for themselves. Of course, many people wanted to see this senior with their own eyes. The survivors of the Huaichuan massacre wanted to pay their respects to their savior. There were also hot-blooded youngsters and meticulous opportunists who wanted to seize this once-in-a-century opportunity to become a disciple of this peerless master who defeated the Gold Radiance Grand Sword Saint. The disciples of Sanskrit Temple, Wushuan sect, Pine Crane sect, and other sects all gathered together to stop these people from disturbing Senior Sun Lang. However, there was no lack of people with unique skills among those Jianghu people. Sometimes the disciples of the various sects could not stop them and actually let them go. When these experts who broke through the blockade rushed into the small courtyard with different feelings, they met the owner of the house, who welcomed them with a smile. It only took a short while for these unruly and skillful swordsmen to leave obediently with excited expressions on their faces. It was as if a fat otaku had just seen a living quilt king. When they came out, they all said the same thing. That person was indeed a grandmaster, a hero that was hard to find in this world. Their trip to the Bai Castle was now in the bag. They were all convinced and voluntarily joined the team to stop the senior. This magical phenomenon intensified the discussion, and the mysterious aura around the senior became even more intense. The voices of doubt became softer and softer, while the voices of praise became louder and louder. In the end, it even evolved into the most extreme public opinion. Whoever dares to question the senior will have their head blown off. The heavens took pity on them, and not many people had seen the senior's appearance with their own eyes. However, they were all waving flags and shouting, as if they had also been received by the senior. "Why are you doing this? Yang Zai, you're a martial arts dreamer. How can you not understand this principle?" At this moment, the senior's admonishment came from the small courtyard. "It's because I maintain a mysterious image that most people have only heard of my legends, but have never seen me in person. Their impression of me is all based on their imagination and legends. Therefore, the people of Tensei Province can't find a reason to slander me. Do you understand?" Hero Yang suddenly understood and said, "I see." At this moment, Sun Lang and Yang Tiandu were eating, drinking, and chatting in the room. After the shock of last night, Hero Yang's feelings towards Sun Lang suddenly became complicated, and he was not so afraid of this cruel madman. He then stretched out his chopsticks and wanted to pick up a peanut. Suddenly, his chopsticks shook and were knocked to the side. "Eat something else. The peanuts are all mine." "It's still so strange." Yang Tiandu smiled bitterly and put down his chopsticks. He said carefully, "But the people of Tensei Province won't give up so easily." Sun Lang nodded and said, "Yes, the plan that the people of Tensei Province work hard to come up with has been ruined by me. How can they give up so easily? If I'm not wrong, those voices of criticism and doubt about me are secretly made by them. However, I played a trick on her. She's not good enough to play a public opinion war with me." Yang Tiandu murmured, "But the people of Tensei Province still won't give up, right?" Sun Lang said meaningfully, "Don't worry, people won't be tripped by the same stone 3 times. Everything will be revealed tomorrow. Chapter 664. It was like the calm before the storm. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner, regardless of whether it was an overt plot or a conspiracy under the table. By Castle, Tensei Province, Huichuan's Avengers, and Sun Lang. Everyone was plotting their own things in this strange calm. Bai Yue was still a child. He couldn't remember anything and couldn't do anything. Xiaowei was still worried. The uneasiness in her heart grew day by day, but she had no one to talk to. She couldn't find the source of her uneasiness. Bai Junming calmly carried out his duties as the head of the family. It was as if today wasn't the eve of the final battle, but an ordinary day. He received the elders of the family, had lunch with his family, and went to the show sword garden to visit his father. It was as usual. The sun in the sky gradually moved westward. The brilliant sunlight changed colors. Time passed from noon to afternoon. Jinyuan town was peaceful. The focus of the martial artist discussion was the battle of Bai Castle the next day. Heroes gathered to challenge the Sword Saint's family. For the righteousness of Jianghu, for the justice of Jianghu, for the sake of a life for a life, this was undoubtedly a major event that shook the martial arts world. Everyone involved felt honored. Moreover, there was a senior who was strong in martial arts and had defeated Bai Yue. It was even more stable. Most people were very optimistic about tomorrow's events. This was normal. A conspiracy was a private carnival. Most people knew nothing about it and were afraid of it. They only danced for the desires and selfishness of a small number of people. For example, Tensei Province, who were unwilling to admit defeat, had begun to launch a counterattack. Unlike others, Tensei Province knew the truth. They had already guessed that Sun Lang was colluding with the Bai family. The best way to sabotage Sun Lang was to spread this rumor and shake Sun Lang's prestige and reputation. For example, this was a 2-man show performed by Sun Lang and the Bai family. However, Sun Lang always seemed to be one step ahead of them. Before this rumor began to ferment, the Bai family's forces lurking in the town had already seized the upper hand of public opinion under his command. For example, they would publicize the personal grudge between the Heavenly Policy Mansion and the Bai clan fort. They would also spread conspiracy theories and link this matter to the internal strife within the imperial court. He had been a keyboard warrior and a fan in his previous life, so he was very familiar with this kind of grand scheme and strategy. The further away one was from the imperial court, the more interested they would be in political gossip. Even though these people from the pugilistic world usually did not care about the imperial court, they were still quite interested in the dog-eat-dog fights in the officialdom. Therefore, in the battle of public opinion, Sun Lang once again took the initiative and killed the Heavenly Planning Prefecture's scheme in the cradle. Another victory. In this remote and quiet courtyard, Sun Lang was strategizing from several miles away, stirring up changes in the entire Sichuan. He said to Yang Tiandu while chewing peanuts, "You martial arts internet celebrities also need to learn some operation and publicity skills. Not only do you need to know how to hype yourself up, but you also need to learn how to slander others. You guys still have a long way to go." Yang Tiandu was deep in thought. Hero Yang had experienced unimaginable pain last night and regarded Sun Lang as a terrifying madman. But in the blink of an eye, this person's image had changed greatly, which surprised him. Then, Sun Lang showed him his special skills of hype and scolding others. He felt as if he had learned a lot. Originally, he had made the decision to immediately wash his hands of the business after this, take all his savings and fly abroad. But now, he didn't want to leave. After all, from last night until now, he had been by Sun Lang's side, talking to this master to relieve his boredom. This mysterious master was not only strong in martial arts, but also experienced and knowledgeable. Although he didn't know much about Jianghu, he was actually very familiar with the survival of a martial arts celebrity like Hero Yang. Every time he said a few words, Yang Tiandu was shocked and felt as if he had understood something. In the old man's words, "Although I've never been in your entertainment circle, I've seen more melons than you've seen. It can be said that I've been through hundreds of battles and seen a lot." Then he gave Hero Yang a few examples, such as the offensive and defensive battle between the musician surnamed Shui and his lover surnamed Li, the 20 years of revenge between the actor surnamed Zhou and the actor surnamed Lin, all kinds of forbearance, all kinds of maneuvers, the battle of wits and courage. It was more enjoyable than fighting a war, and it made Hero Yang's experience point skyrocket. He now felt that if he was given a month to prepare, he would be able to destroy his competitor and enemy, a certain bastard surnamed Wang who walked the same path as him, and ruin his reputation. But all of this depended on the result of tomorrow's battle. After all, the opponent was Tensei Province, and the outcome was unpredictable. If he lost, then everything would be over and he would have to run. At this moment, Hero Yang was completely tied to Sun Lang's warship. He had revealed too many things that he shouldn't have. Even if he were to betray the Heavenly Policy Mansion now, the other party would no longer trust him. Moreover, Sun Lang was not easy to deal with, and he couldn't muster up any courage to resist. After all, as Sun Lang said last night, he, Yang Tiandu, was not a tough nut to crack. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile bitterly and sigh. "Senior, how confident are you tomorrow?" Sun Lang smiled. 100%. Well, it was a waste of time to ask. What enviable confidence. But he still couldn't help but say, "The opponent is Tensei Province, and there are many fierce generals and capable people. They are scheming, and we are alone." Sun Lang smiled and said, "It's precisely because I'm alone that the Heavenly Policy Mansion has the misconception that they can defeat me. That's why they have the courage to deal with me. However, what I, Sun Lang, like the most in my life is to say no to people who think they're strong and then smash their heads." Yang Tiandu was tongue-tied, and then he let out a faint sigh. He looked up at the sky, and the sun was gradually setting in the west. The sunset on the horizon was as bright as fire, and the old day was coming to an end. Tomorrow, everything will come to an end. In the evening, Bai Zhenming went to visit his father with the food box, as usual. As usual, he accompanied his father to eat, served him, and told him some things in the past. The little minx was also asked to stay for dinner, but Xiaowei was still full of worries, and the two sides didn't talk much. After talking for a while, Bai Izhiming packed up the food box. He finally stared at his father for a while and whispered, "Something happened at home tomorrow, so this son won't be coming. Take care, father." Without waiting for Bai Yue to speak, he bowed slightly, nodded to Xiaowei, and finally left. Bai Yue stared blankly at his son's back as he left. He didn't know why, but his chest felt stifled. He had a feeling that he wanted to cry. Unfortunately, he couldn't do anything with his current state of mind and memory. The insight and decisiveness of the gold-radiant sword saint and the famous generals of 3 dynasties had nothing to do with him at this moment. The current Bai Yue was just a 7 or 8-year-old child who didn't know anything and couldn't remember anything. Xiaowei was also in a daze. Her Cold War with Sister Lu was still ongoing. She had a lot of worries, but Bai Yue didn't understand, and Sister Lu didn't have the patience to listen, so she was looking forward to Sun Lang's return. She needed someone to listen to her thoughts and worries. Tomorrow. He would be back tomorrow, but hopefully sooner. The moon was high in the sky, and night fell. The Bai clan castle was lit up, and the vast mansion was brightly lit. Under the quiet and peaceful appearance, everyone was destined to be sleepless. They knew that something big was going to happen tomorrow. The number of people patrolling increased several times, and many people secretly went down the mountain with missions. Under the highest command of the patriarch, this huge and ancient family was working hard to exert all of its power. The big event tomorrow was imminent, and Bai Zhiming was supposed to be sleepless. However, after making the necessary arrangements, he returned home and talked to his wife for a while. Then, he hugged her and fell asleep early. He slept peacefully, and it was the most peaceful sleep he had had in recent days. No, perhaps it was because of the discovery of his father's mental illness 2 years ago. Until today, this was the first time he had slept so soundly. He had done everything he could. The rest, he would leave to the will of heaven. At night, Sun Lang sat on the roof and looked at the starry sky, frowning slightly. There were actually some ripples in his heart. Tomorrow, heroes would gather at the Bai clan castle. This was going to shake the martial arts world and have a far-reaching impact. This was related to the Bai clan castle's century-old reputation and the lives of thousands of people in the Bai clan. It was also related to the political future of the Tianyuan Empire, the power struggle between the monarch and his subjects, and the changes in the imperial court. The outcome of the Bai clan castle incident would affect the fate of many people. However, none of this had anything to do with him. He didn't care about these things at all. He was here for the golden luminary sacred sword, and he didn't have to have the golden luminary sacred sword because it was not the only sacred sword in the world. Therefore, no matter what happened tomorrow, no matter what the outcome was, theoretically speaking, it wouldn't affect him at all. Even if there were hundreds of thousands of soldiers waiting for him at the Bai clan fort tomorrow, he wouldn't even frown. However, at this moment, a ripple had appeared in his heart. He was a little annoyed. A soft sound came from his side. Hero Yang cautiously flipped over to the roof with 2 bottles of wine in his hands. He met Sun Lang's gaze and revealed a somewhat reserved smile. "Say, Senior, would you like some?" Sun Lang looked at him with a half-smile. "How much poison did you put in it?" Hero Yang almost stumbled to the ground. He shouted as if his butt was on fire. I'm not stupid." Sun Lang smiled and waved his hand. The wine bottle in Yang Tian Du's left hand flew out and landed in his hand. He pulled out the cork and took a whiff of the wine. "I'm still not used to drinking." Even so, he still took a big gulp and let out a long sigh. "But I have to admit that wine can be useful sometimes." Hero Yang carefully took a few steps forward and sat down a few feet away from Sun Lang. He took a sip of the wine and asked tentatively, "Senior, is there something on your mind?" After all, they were going to buy castle tomorrow. As Sun Lang's prisoner, Hero Yang knew best what was going on. Tomorrow, it would not be a conflict between the Jianghu forces and the Bai castle, but a battle between Sun Lang and the Tensei province. Poor Hero Yang, due to a momentary lapse in judgment, could not resist the temptation of joining the Tensei province. He became a lackey of the Tensei province and said something that he should not have. As a result, he was targeted by a terrifying person and became a fish trapped in the moat. In other words, his current life depended on the outcome of tomorrow's battle. It could be said that he, Hero Yang, was the most anxious person in the entire Jinyuan town. That was why he could not sleep that night. He was praying to the gods in the courtyard when he turned around and saw Sun Lang sitting on the roof and staring blankly at the moon. He looked as if he was in a trance. Hero Yang was immediately scared out of his wits. F***CK. You know how to be scared too? What happened to the energy you had this afternoon? If even Sun Lang, this kind of great demon king with high martial arts, felt afraid and worried, then Hero Yang might as well slit his own throat as soon as possible. Thinking left and right, he became more and more flustered. He simply gathered his courage and brought good wine up to the room. No matter what, he had to sound out this great master son's intentions. Sun Lang took another sip of wine and asked, "What do you think I'm worried about?" Hero Yang said carefully, "Tomorrow's battle is imminent. You'll be facing the Tensei province head-on. After all, your opponent is the famous Empress Umanchen. Although your martial arts are peerless, you're still worried, aren't you?" Sun Lang rolled his eyes and said, "Worry my ass. Even if that woman finds the remaining 7 Luminaries Grand Sword Masters to ambush me in the Bai Castle, I can still F***king blow their heads off. What's there to be worried about?" Wow, he only took a sip of wine and he's already bragging? Hero Yang's courage grew as the wine went down his throat. He said, "Then what are you thinking about?" "To be honest, my martial arts are not worth mentioning in your eyes, but I've traveled extensively and met countless people. I still have a good eye. You're staring blankly at the moon. I can tell that there's something in your heart." Sun Lang was stunned for a moment, then said slowly, "There is something." Hero Yang secretly pricked up his ears, but he still asked casually, "What is it?" Sun Lang said seriously, "To be honest, after this deal is done, I'll go back to my hometown and F***CK some people. But there are so many people to choose from. It's very difficult to decide which one to F***CK first." Huh? Hero Yang was stunned for a moment. Then he heard Sun Lang continue, "Because I only have one D***CK, but a lot of D***CK. There has to be an order to F***CK first and F***CK later. As for women, you know it's very troublesome." Sigh. "It's really troublesome. Wow. Don't you have a lot of female friends here too? Then why did you hit me before?" Yang Tian-du cursed in his heart. Then he was glared at by Sun Lang. "Damn it. Just thinking about it makes me angry. Why do you have to appear in front of me at this time? Do you want to be beaten again?" Hero Yang felt his hair stand on end. He hurriedly jumped down from the roof. Sun Lang shouted from above, "Hurry up and go to sleep. The movie is starting tomorrow. Remember to go to bed early and wake up early. Don't worry about it. Maybe after tomorrow, you won't have to worry about anything." How can you comfort someone like that? Yang Tian-du entered the room with a gloomy heart. Sun Lang looked at the moon, then suddenly shook his head and sighed. "Something on my mind?" "There was nothing on my mind. I was just a little unhappy. Because some things, even if you know it will happen, even if you're mentally prepared when it happens, you'll still be unhappy. It's just unhappy. It's just unhappy. If I'm unhappy, some people won't be able to live peacefully." Sun Lang's eyes gradually turned cold. The night passed silently. Until dawn, Jinyuan town slowly woke up. Some people didn't even sleep the whole night. The energetic Jianghu people called their brothers and friends to gather from all directions. Bai Castle, dozens of miles away, was also slowly waking up. The storm had arrived. It was about to begin. Chapter 665. Early in the morning, Hero Yang was washing his face in the courtyard. Of course, he didn't sleep well last night. His bones weren't that hard, and his mental fortitude wasn't that good either. After all, the battle between Sun Lang and Tensei Province would have a preliminary result today. Who would win and who would lose, who would be strong and who would be weak, would be revealed in a few hours. He scooped up a handful of cold water and splashed it on his face. The bone-chilling feeling stimulated his well-maintained face, making him shiver. Yes, it was today. The door was pushed open, and Sun Lang came out from the inner room. He saw Hero Yang in the courtyard and smiled. "Oh, you're up so early. Do you cherish your last morning so much?" Hero Yang almost choked on the cold water. He sighed and said resentfully, "Senior, can't you say something nice?" "Oh." Sun Lang pondered for a moment and then praised, "You're up so early. You must be very excited and can't wait." "Bullshit. I wish time would stay like last night forever." Hero Yang's voice became more and more weak. "How can you tell that I can't wait?" Sun Lang gave him a thumbs up and showed his shiny teeth. He smiled and said, "It's very simple. You must have been very worried and troubled these 2 days. But after today, maybe you won't have to worry anymore. You'll bid farewell to all the worries and sadness in the world. You won't have to think about anything, and you won't have to bear anything. You must be looking forward to this kind of peace." Wow, you're really good at following good advice. These few words are so *king nice. You can even say death in such a fresh and refined way. Hero Yang, who was angry but didn't dare to say anything, was madly complaining in his heart. Sun Lang came to his side and patted him on the shoulder. Don't worry. Yang Zi, let me teach you a lesson. In this world, there are many deaths. They're all caused by the people involved, understand?" Hero Yang blinked and said dumbfoundedly, "I don't really understand." "Stupid." Sun Lang smiled and said, "For example, think about it. Why did you get targeted by me and end up in such a pitiful situation? You know how pitiful my situation is. You don't seem to care about this at all when you bully me." Yang Tian cursed endlessly in his heart, but due to Sun Lang's abuse of power, he didn't dare show it at all. He spoke with an aggrieved tone. "Of course, it's because I was possessed by greed and insatiable greed. For the sake of establishing a connection with the Heavenly Policy Mansion, I couldn't restrain myself for a moment and became the Heavenly Policy Mansion's lackey. So, I was targeted by you." To be honest, Hero Yang had been regretting his decision for the past 2 days. Every time there was no one around, he thought of his decision to seek refuge in Tensei Province and wished he could slap himself 18 times. That's right. If you hadn't sought refuge in Tensei Province, you wouldn't have been held here by me. Your life is beyond your control. As the saying goes, you reap what you sow. Everyone has to bear the corresponding price for their choices. Ironically, Sun Lang's eyes flickered as he said faintly, "Humans often think that they are infallible and think that they can bear the consequences. In fact, they can't." Yang Tiandu thought about it and nodded slowly. Sun Lang smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "So far, your performance is not bad. Soon, you will know how wise your choice was." The senior's smile was still warm, his attitude was gentle, and his tone was calm, but Hero Yang couldn't help but shudder. At this moment, there was a rush of footsteps outside. Soon, someone knocked on the door and said respectfully from outside, "Senior, everyone is waiting for your order." Sun Lang patted his clothes and tidied up his robe. He reached out, and the door opened. Master Jing and the others were waiting respectfully in front of the door. Sun Lang's gaze swept over them, and the corners of his mouth hooked up into a faintly discernible smile. With a warm smile, he said, "You can discuss when it's set off. I'm not your leader, so you don't have to consult me about everything." Shimen Qing cupped his hands and said, "Senior, you don't have to decline. You are a hero, unparalleled in the world. We are all convinced that you are the leader. A real man can't be without power for a day. You will like the pleasure of commanding the heroes." Sun Lang chuckled. "I don't really like it now." The heroes of the martial arts world looked at each other, not understanding what he meant. Then, they heard Sun Lang say with a smile, "But there is no harm in revisiting old dreams. Some skills can't be forgotten in a short time." Immediately after, they saw Sun Lang soar into the air like a goshawk flying through the air. Everyone present was a first-class expert in the martial arts world, but no one could see Sun Lang's movements clearly. He was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, he crossed 1,000 feet in the air and arrived at the highest point of the town. like a dragon's roar. The sound of a tiger's roar reverberated throughout Jinyuan town. Yang Tiandu had taught him before that the rules of the martial arts world were that seniors should speak loudly and loudly to let everyone know that they were awesome. He said, "Hey, how are you?" There was no need to introduce himself or try to worm his way into being friends. He only needed to greet them. The people gathered in various places of Jinyuan town raised their heads at the same time and immediately saw the figure of High Wind Rider. The violent sound was like a tide that pushed across the entire town, rumbling in everyone's hearts. Just from the sound, they knew who that person was. Yesterday, the focus of everyone's discussion in the taverns and inns was about that person's master, that person's identity, and how high that person's martial arts were. Now, they all knew that the roar that was like a real tide signified an unheard-of profound martial arts. Yet, no one was injured. This kind of martial arts was simply shocking. Greetings, senior. Those martial artists who had seen Sun Lang's true appearance and had been intimidated by his aura and might excitedly wave their hands and loudly greeted him. The Sun Lang that these people saw was actually an illusion. It was the Sun Lang of 2 years ago, the Grand Marshal who was regarded as a reborn saint by the soldiers of the 6 armies, the great general who once stood upright and upright, the great hero who was still as dazzling as the sun in the Tianyuan era. Even if it was only a shadow, it was enough to make these self-abased and proud martial artists of the martial arts world admire him wholeheartedly. Thus, when those people who had never seen Sun Lang criticized and questioned him, they bravely stepped forward to defend Sun Lang's reputation and argued with the crowd. However, Sun Lang's image was still very mysterious. In the end, he did not appear in front of everyone. As the saying goes, seeing is believing. More people have not seen him, so they naturally had doubts in their hearts. Even if the brainless fans swore and did their best to explain, they could not help but receive doubtful gazes and perfunctory replies. This made these people who wanted to promote the glory of their senior feel very depressed and angry. But now, their senior had finally appeared. Everything had come to light. Do you still dare to not believe? Do you still dare question? These people immediately felt a sense of exaltation. Without a doubt, now that the truth was out, they had become the few smart people who insisted on the truth. At this moment, the louder their cheers, the more it showed that their insistence was correct. It showed that the people who questioned them were idiots, and it showed that they were very familiar with their senior. The people who once questioned Sun Lang also lowered their eyes in shame. However, they were also very smart and reacted quickly. Thus, they also raised their fists and cheered with the people around them to show that they were also part of the people who supported their senior and not those stubborn idiots. For a moment, waves of cheers came one after another. Seeing this, Yang Tian was dumbfounded. What was going on? Since when did he become so popular? Sun Lang listened to the tsunami-like cheers from below with a calm expression. He had seen bigger scenes than this, and the scene of people worshiping and cheering him even made him feel a little irritated. Just as he said, he did not like people cheering and worshiping him anymore. He no longer liked being a hero. It was just a relationship between using and being used. You reap what you sow. Everyone has to be responsible for their own actions. You all are the same, and so am I. Therefore, he raised his hands and shouted, "Since all of you know me, I will not talk nonsense. Let's go. Bring your swords and guns. We will go to Bai Clan Fort and reason things out." Dominating the world and commanding the heroes was a very distant memory. He was once trusted by many people and followed by many people. He was once like today, standing on a high platform and under the gaze of countless burning gazes, he made a speech that was enough to go down in history and inspire the brave people to protect their homeland. But now everything had changed. However, there were also things that had not changed. Just like now, the people listened to Sun Lang's simple command and looked at his figure. They did not know why, but just a simple command and just a simple figure made their blood boil. Those simple words seemed to have the power to awaken their souls. That tall figure was like a war flag. Just by standing there, it was enough to make people feel more courageous. For some reason, The people who had seen Sun Lang and the illusion from 2 years ago had tears in their eyes. They looked at Sun Lang's figure as if they had been cursed. It was as if they had seen the continuation of a great legend. It was as if wherever this figure stood, there would be a light that would never fade. It did not matter if it was an instinct or a curse. The figure that was once the focus of attention and countless hopes and expectations had been tempered into the figure of a hero by blood and fire. He had become the figure that the strong and fragile soldiers expected. He had become the most needed state in the world of war. Some things would never change. The person named Sun Lang would never be able to return to the past. He would never be able to return to his old self. These people were just like those people a few years ago. Their blood boiled and they could not wait to roar to the sky. That figure was like a flame in the darkness, attracting moths to the flame and courageous people to follow the legend. Therefore, they loudly responded to Sun Lang's call. They cheered, shouted, roared, and passionately. More people were moved by this passionate atmosphere and could not help but be pulled into the huge crowd. They were infected by the fanatical atmosphere and cheered and shouted along with the crowd. The journey to the Bai clan's castle that was about to begin had been given a new meaning at this moment. Everything was because of that person's leadership. If he was the leader, then everything that happened would become a legend. The people looked at Sun Lang with more and more fanatical eyes. Their shouts became louder and louder. They merged together and intertwined into multiple roars and shouts. However, their shouts were very messy and chaotic. Some of them were shouting, "We will go through fire and water without hesitation." Some were shouting, "We will follow Senior's lead." And some were shouting, "Yes, sir." They were like a fan group that had just been born and expanded. They did not have a unified slogan, so it was very chaotic. However, this problem was quickly solved. Some people thought of the famous speech that Master Yang gave a few days ago, and the slogan that made people's blood boil. Obviously, this situation was more suitable. Everyone followed this glorious leader to do something earth-shattering. Therefore, standing at a high place, Sun Lang, who was immersed in his thoughts of the past, not knowing whether he was happy or sad, suddenly heard a very familiar voice. When he came to his senses, he saw that there was a black mass of people below him. Martial artists from all over the world had gathered together and were looking at him with fanatical eyes. They waved their arms and shouted 3 short words in a loud voice. "A dead country! A dead country! A dead country!" Chapter 666. Sun Lang felt that at this moment, he and those idols finally understood each other. He finally knew how those cute little sisters in cute little dresses and prettily dressed looked at the fat otakus who were crazily cheering for them below the stage. Ugh, so disgusting. Hearing the sudden outburst of cheers, Sun Lang almost lost his footing. "Damn," he shouted, "get ready to go." Then he jumped off the roof as fast as he could. In a small courtyard, the martial arts heroes who had come to invite Sun Lang to set off were also shocked by the scene just now. Although they were famous martial artists who had been famous for decades, when they saw the scene just now, when they saw Sun Lang's back in the fanatical crowd, their souls, who had been through hundreds of battles and seen many things, were faintly agitated. They were all cunning old foxes with deep thoughts. They were not as impulsive as young people, and they were not easily swayed by the fanatical atmosphere. However, this did not prevent them from seeing more important things. The experts exchanged meaningful glances. Some of them still had a hint of shock in their eyes. It seems that we have underestimated this senior. Such a hero is rare in the world. Heroes will not be covered in dust in troubled times. His name will definitely be recorded in the history of the Tianyuan War. But who is it? They immediately looked at Yang Tiandu, with complicated feelings. This guy actually managed to find such a powerful backer. At this time, Hero Yang could only be described as a villain intoxicated by success. His face was full of fanaticism and pride. He had completely thrown away his elegant, white-robed hero persona to one side. His whole person looked like a die-hard fan. It seemed that he had also been infected by Sun Lang's virus. He met everyone's gaze, waved his arms, and shouted, "Die! Dead country! Dead country!" However, Master Jing and the others had been in the martial arts world for decades. They were not the kind of young people who would explode at the slightest provocation. Facing Yang Tiandu's fanatical support, everyone looked at him as if he was retarded. It was like a normal otaku looking at Yu Chue. Just like Yu Chue, Hero Yang did not change his expression in the face of cold stares and mockery. He continued to shout, "A dead country, a dead country, a dead country." The experts rolled their eyes in their hearts. "We all know that you found a big backer, and we're all very envious of you. Can you stop showing off?" Daoist Yin hesitated for a moment and advised with a subtle expression, "Hero Yang, be more dignified, be more dignified." Yang Tiandu shouted at him, "You're dead. A dead country." The martial profound sex sword master suddenly felt a wave of anger rising from his dantian. He was just about to go up and give Yang Tiandu a kick to calm this vile person down when he suddenly heard the sound of the wind. Turning his head, he saw Sun Lang flying over. "Don't be in a daze. Let's get ready to go." Everyone frowned and looked at each other helplessly. Once the senior comes back, Yang Tiandu will definitely be more energetic with his support. Sigh, how infuriating. When Sun Lang landed and entered the door, sure enough, Hero Yang was waving his arms fanatically. With the greatest respect and worship, he shouted at the senior expert who defeated by Yue, "A dead country! A dead country! A dead country!" Daoist Zi Yin was the closest to Sun Lang, so with his eyesight as a sword master, he clearly saw the changes in the senior's expression. From the initial impatience and unsure whether to laugh or cry, to the current expressionless face. Then he saw the senior lift his leg. Then there was a bang. Oh, he kicked him. The senior kicked Yang Tiandu. The senior kicked him. Everyone only saw a shadow flash in front of their eyes. Hero Yang, who was screaming that he was going to die, flew out like a cloud and crashed into a pile of firewood in the corner of the yard. Only his 2 legs were exposed outside, kicking wildly. Then, Sun Lang turned around gloomily and asked, "Who else shouted just now?" Master Ji Ying and the others shook their heads frantically and pointed at Hero Yang, who crashed into the firewood pile, and said in unison, "Only him." Sun Lang sighed and said, "Idiots." Everyone nodded subconsciously. Hearing the faint cheers coming from outside, Sun Lang let out a subtle sigh. He waved his hand and said, "All right, everyone, let's go. We should be able to make it in time for lunch at the Bai Clan Fort." Everyone obeyed the order and left. Hero Yang was still stuck in the firewood pile, kicking wildly. The scene was extremely miserable. Then the army set out. Rather than calling it an army, it was better to call it a motley crew. There was no organization and no discipline. Although Sun Lang was a famous general, he was not interested in teaching this group of unemployed people. After all, he could not count on them even if he wanted to fight a war, so he did not care. Then the group of people set out in a mess. There were no scouts, no vanguard, and no rear guard. Their formation was scattered and their organization was poor. They had no intention of hiding their whereabouts. As soon as the army left Jinyuan town, carrier pigeons and eagles soared into the sky, informing everyone of their departure. There were too many people who were paying attention to this important matter. The outcome of the Bai Clan Fort incident would change many people and things. Everyone was eagerly waiting for the news to come. Sun Lang, the leader of the army, led the leaders of the various clans at the front. He could not help it. He could send Yang Tiandu flying. But what could he do when a group of idiots shouted a dead country at him? "I'm also in despair." He rode on a tall horse and looked at the scenery along the way. Master Ji Ying and a group of people followed behind him. The horses were moving at a brisk pace. Sun Lang's eyesight was extremely good, and this area was also relatively wide. He glanced at the surroundings, and as far as the eye could see, there was nothing at all. Thus, he lightly clicked his tongue. "If I were Bai Jinming, I would use a large amount of money to bribe the commander-in-chief of the army and asked them to lead the army to block this road and set up a checkpoint, not allowing us to pass. He actually didn't do that. Shimin Qing from the Earth Absolute Saber Sect was a tall and mighty man. He was very heroic, or at least he looked very heroic. He laughed and said, "Senior is a master outside of this world. You don't know about the chaos in the officialdom. This matter has a wide range of implications. The court and the common people are all watching. The lords of the officials are all shrewd people who would be willing to bear such a huge responsibility to stand up for the Bai clan. No amount of money will work. Even if they can stop us, the general will be drowned in the spittle of the Jianghu people in a few days." Everyone nodded slightly to show their agreement. Yang Tiandu was asked by Sun Lang to memorize some speeches last night. Today, he took on the responsibility of acting as a shill. He said, "But it's really strange. The officials who are wise to protect themselves will not stand up for Bai clan. But Bai Yue is a senior official of 3 dynasties and the most meritorious official in the imperial court. He has many old friends. If he says something, some of his old subordinates will be willing to take on such a huge responsibility to help us." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. This was indeed a problem. Although they were here for the Huaichuan murder case, their criticism of Bai Yue had to be split into 2 sides. No one could deny the achievements of the most meritorious official in the Tianyuan continent. That's true. Why didn't Bai Yue send his henchmen to stop us? Shimin Qing of the Earthly Invincible Saber Sect had a feud with Bai clan. This time, when Bai Yue was suspected to have killed someone, he ran away faster than anyone else. He did not have a good impression of Bai clan. He snorted and said, "Maybe the old bastard is too arrogant. He thinks that he can suppress us with his sword and doesn't take us seriously. As the saying goes, the matters of the Jianghu should be settled in the Jianghu." Master Jing glanced at Sun Lang and asked submissively, "Amit Ba, Senior, you have fought with Bai Yue before. What do you think?" Sun Lang said faintly, "When I fought with Bai Yue in Huaichuan, I felt that there was something wrong with him, with his status. It's really beneath his dignity to wantonly slaughter people of the martial arts world who aren't strong." Shimin Qing gritted his teeth and said, "But it's him after all. Senior, you've seen him before." Sun Lang nodded. "It's him indeed, whether it's his appearance or his martial arts. No matter what, we must meet him when we go up the mountain. Then, we'll be able to explain everything." Yang Tiandu followed Sun Lang. He listened to everyone's conversation and guesses. He looked at Sun Lang's back and guessed Sun Lang's purpose. He mentioned Bai Yue. Could it be that, when the Huaichuan's Avengers Alliance started to move toward the Bai clan fort, Bai Zhiming had already received the news? He sat in the middle of the room and carefully read the report brought by the butler. Then he heaved a long sigh. The butler stood beside him, waiting on him with his hands down. Bai Zhiming put the report aside and said calmly, "Brother Qing, we have an important guest. You're in charge of receiving them. Don't forget the etiquette of the Bai clan. Don't let the Bai clan down." The butler said calmly, "Don't worry, master. The boys are ready. We'll listen to your orders whether you want to talk or fight." Early this morning, the Bai clan fort had issued the strictest martial law. Without orders, all servants were to stay in their houses and were not allowed to move around. Those who disobeyed would be killed without mercy. The important members of the clan were gathered together and protected by the clan's guardians. The less important members of the collateral branches were also ordered to stay in their own houses and were not allowed to move around. The most elite disciples and servants of the family were all gathered together. The Bai family was a family of sword saints and generals. It was a tradition for them to practice martial arts. Every year, they would select the excellent disciples of the branch family and the loyal servants to train and teach them. The drill was written by Yue himself. All the training standards were the same as the elites in the army. This was the custom of the family of generals. The Bai clan had always maintained elite troops of various sizes. Whenever the imperial court summoned a member of the clan or a member of the main clan to join the army, the Bai clan would take a portion of the loyal private soldiers with them as their trusted aides in the future. They knew each other well, so their loyalty and fighting ability were guaranteed. Besides serving as a reserve force, These private soldiers had another important function that everyone knew but would never say out loud. When the Bai clan encountered a great crisis, these loyal elite troops would become the most powerful weapon to suppress the situation, or they would be the last deterrent to fight to the death. And now it was time to use them. The sealed armory was opened, and the prohibited armors and weapons were transported out. If necessary, they could be equipped to the private soldiers as soon as possible. As for the prohibited items, Bai Jinming no longer cared about such trivial matters. He thought about everything and asked again, "What about the shovel sword garden?" The butler said in a calm tone, "According to your instructions, we have made further arrangements and taken precautions." Bai Jinming sighed softly. "That's good." His hands began to tremble uncontrollably because the group of martial artists was only 40 miles away from the Bai clan fort. That means Sun Lang is only 40 miles away from me. His fate was approaching him step by step. What was to come would eventually come. He thought about everything from the beginning to the end, then waved his hand and said, "Brother Qing, you can go now. Be careful and don't fight them head on. Pay attention to your safety." The butler bowed and asked, "Master, do you want to go and see the old master?" Bai Jinming glanced at him and shook his head. "No, we have more important things to do now. I've already been there last night." "Yes." After saying that, the housekeeper accepted the order and left without saying anything else. Bai Jinming's straight body slowly softened. He leaned against the chair and looked at the beam. Suddenly, he let out a bleak laugh. Sun Lang is almost here. Sun Lang is indeed almost here. As the sun rose, it was close to noon. Under the dim sunlight, the crowd could already see the huge scale of the Bai clan fort. The Bai clan team in charge of welcoming guests was already waiting at the foot of the mountain. Chapter 667. Bai Castle was built on top of a mountain. Rather than a castle, it was more like a small town. It was built on the top of a high mountain, boasting of its abundant manpower and financial resources, overlooking the multitudes of living beings in the West River. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was the local tyrant of Sichuan. It was the first time for most of the people of Jianghu to see Bai Castle. They were used to hearing about the Bai family's power in Sichuan and the Bai family's domineering ways in Qinzhou. However, hearing about it 10,000 times was not as good as seeing it in person. The continuous cluster of buildings on top of the mountain was the destination of their trip. How magnificent! How magnificent! How magnificent! Perhaps it was only at this moment that they realized what kind of colossus they were about to face. Many people had already exclaimed, and the timid people had already started to plan their escape route. Fortunately, they were not the main force of this trip, and no one had ever counted on them. Sun Lang sat upright on the horse with a dignified bearing. His steady posture made the people around him feel at ease. In this world where mortals could become peerless warriors, their divine sense could be condensed into a solid substance, and their aura could oppress living creatures. Naturally, a peerless general who had dominated the battlefield and won hundreds of battles would also have an invincible bearing. Even if it was just a figure, it would be enough to calm the shaky morale of the army. He squinted his eyes and looked ahead for a while. Bai Castle was built on top of a mountain. It was not easy to travel from the foot of the mountain to the foot of the mountain, but they had used a huge amount of manpower and resources to open up a broad road. From the top of the mountain to the foot of the mountain, the wide and smooth road spiraled gently. There were pavilions set up at intervals, and there were also 2 platforms, plazas, houses, and taverns along the way. As for the flowers and trees, the scenery was tranquil and the air was refreshing. Sun Lang sighed and said, "Ah, every inch of this beautiful land is soaked in the sweat and tears of the poor and laboring people." Obviously, if such a good place was placed in the Celestial Empire, the family that owned it would be the first to be turned into idiots during the land reform, and this precious land would also encounter all kinds of bumpy fates. However, there was no need to panic. In the end, it would be made into a famous scenic spot. With extremely high ticket prices, extremely expensive prices, and fabricated touching legends, it would attract wave after wave of tourists to come and pay money. Ximenqing was obviously the most loyal member of the Bai family. When he heard this, he agreed, "Senior's right. This luxurious house is filled with the wealth of the people. It's best to burn it all down." Sun Lang smiled meaningfully. "Don't be in such a hurry to start a fire. The other side wants to use peaceful means before resorting to force. Look, the welcoming team is already here." While he was speaking, a cloud of dust rose from the ground as 5 or 6 riders galloped over on horseback. The one leading them was none other than Bai Junming's right-hand man, the loyal butler of the Bai clan. The butler dismounted from his horse a stone's throw away from Sun Lang. He walked forward and cupped his hands in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. "This one is the Bai clan's butler, Bai Hengqing. Honored guests have come to visit, so I apologize for not going out to meet you." Master Jing and the others were all respectable people of Jianghu. Their businesses were very big, and their status in Jianghu was very high. Therefore, they had to pay attention to etiquette and rules. They couldn't be like when they were young and talk about how to chop your father. Even if the two sides were to fight in private, they still had to pay attention to etiquette on the surface. Seeing that Butler Bai was so polite, they also returned the courtesy. Ximenqing was a twisted member of the Bai clan. He had an unresolvable hatred with the Bai clan. After the two sides finished their greetings, he sat firmly on his tall horse and looked down at Butler Bai. He arrogantly said, "We're all people of Jianghu. Your master didn't call for help from the imperial court, so let's just leave Jianghu matters to Jianghu. People of Jianghu don't care about formalities, so let's get down to business." The several knights who followed Housekeeper Bai couldn't help but show anger. Although Housekeeper Bai didn't get angry, his eyes also dimmed down. He calmly said, "You lead thousands of Jianghu friends. All of you are holding swords, showing off your martial prowess, blocking my Bai family's door. It turns out that you want to talk business. This really makes me feel relieved." Ximenqing coldly said, "Don't try this with me. If you don't want to use your mouth to reason, then we can use another way to reason." Butler Bai proudly said, "I don't know what reason Master Ximen is here to talk about." Ximenqing pressed the hilt of the saber at his waist and stared at Butler Bai. He slowly said, "Naturally, it's the reason for the 318 lives in the Huaichuan massacre." Butler Bai nodded and said, "This one has also heard about that matter. For the dead and injured Jianghu friends, our Bai clan is also very sympathetic. In Jianghu, swords and sabers have no eyes. There are too many examples of people flaunting their power today and being buried tomorrow. It's better to go home and live a stable life." However, the Huaichuan friends have been killed and injured. Ximenqing was secretly stabbed by Housekeeper Bai, and his heart was already furious. Seeing the situation, he was even more furious. He directly pulled out his knife. "Good. I knew that your Bai family would refuse to admit it. But the heavens are clear, and there are witnesses and evidence. Even if your Bai family denies it, it will be difficult for you to escape from the mouth of everyone. Princes who break the law are guilty of the same crime as commoners. Today, the murderer must pay with his life." Butler Bai calmly looked at Ximenqing and said coldly, "Listening to Master Ximen's words, is the murderer hiding in our Bai clan?" Ximenqing raised his hand and slashed. The heavy saber cut out a stunning edge in the air. The fierce saber collided with the air and made a burst of sound. He stared at Butler Bai and said sternly, "Don't play dumb with me. As the butler of the Bai clan, how can you not know that the murderer is your ancestor, the golden radiant sword saint Bai Yue?" When Butler Bai heard this, he suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed. His internal force was deep, and his voice spread far and wide. It startled the birds in the forest, and even the people at the back heard it clearly. After hearing the sharp point of the other party, he didn't say anything and laughed to the sky first. This was basically a common routine in debates. Because laughing could hide one's panic, it could also buy time to think of a way. At the same time, it could also tactically despise the enemy and attack the enemy's mentality. After all, even the most confident person would feel instinctively irritated after hearing a burst of hysterical laughter. Basically, there's only one meaning in laughing in a debate, and that was to tell the opponent, "You are an idiot." As for how you are an idiot, I'll tell you when I'm done laughing. But Butler Bai only laughed halfway when Sun Lang impatiently dug his ear. There was a piece of loose earwax in his ear. It was buzzing because of the loud laughter, but it couldn't be shaken off. Damn, his martial arts was so bad, it was really annoying. He dug twice, and then coldly said, "If you laugh again, I'll twist your head off." When Butler Bai heard this, he bitterly stopped laughing. As a right-hand man of Bai Jinming, he fully understood Sun Lang's temperament. He knew what kind of virtue he had, but he still took the opportunity to look at Shimen Qing and wipe the tears from the corner of his eyes. "Hero Shimen, I know that you have some disagreements with our Bai family. There are grudges between our ancestors and the current generation. I'm not surprised that you're the enemy of the Bai family. But in order to attack the Bai family, you can't even distinguish the most basic right and wrong. This really makes me feel funny." Shimen Qing was about to curse, but Housekeeper Bai spoke first. "Master Ving, you're an esteemed monk of Sanskrit temple, Taoist Master Bai, and you are a revered elder of Xingyang Palace. Both of you are experts outside of the world, old seniors whose names are known throughout the martial world. Do you also believe in such rumors?" Butler Bai took 2 steps back, raised his arms, and said loudly, "My old master is a famous general of the Tian Yuan Empire. He spent his whole life on the battlefield and was loyal to the country. He spent his whole life fighting against the sky demon and dedicated his whole life to the country. Thanks to the mercy of the heavens, he was able to return to his hometown in glory. Although he is old and no longer young, he can at least enjoy the rest of his life at home." When Butler Bai said this, his eyes turned red. He looked at the masters in front of him and gritted his teeth angrily. He has been living in seclusion in the Bai family castle for the past 2 years. He doesn't care about worldly affairs and doesn't see outsiders. He is no different from an ordinary old man. Our old master has completely withdrawn from the imperial court in Jianghu. He didn't even respond to His Majesty's summons. Why would he go to Huaichuan to kill people and ruin his reputation? Butler Bai's acting was really good. He probably revealed some of his true feelings. What he said was also very reasonable. Indeed, Bai Yue was almost the #1 official of the Tian Yuan Empire. He had been a senior official for 3 dynasties and had made outstanding contributions. He had also personally ended the Great War of the Tian Yuan Empire. He was greatly favored by the emperor and was famous throughout the world. At this point, he was also old and had no more pursuits in life. Why would he come out to kill people and ruin his reputation? Master Jing and the others looked at each other. This was indeed a very suspicious point, but Shimen Qing said loudly, "This matter is indeed very suspicious, but there must be some inside story. Bai, even if you have a glib tongue, you can't resist the irrefutable evidence. Many people saw your old master kill people in Huaichuan with their own eyes, including this senior. He was the one who defeated Bai Yue in Huaichuan. He saw it with his own eyes. How can it be false?" Butler Bai's eyes fell on Sun Lang. Both of them looked at each other for a moment and then calmed down. Sun Lang said calmly, "Instead of arguing here, it's better to confront him face to face. Whether it's your old master or not, we can just call him out and let him know." According to Bai Jinming's instructions, Butler Bai immediately said, "No, our old master's status is very noble. He's not someone you can meet just because you want to." Shimen Qing said loudly, "Usually it's fine, but this matter concerns the reputation and survival of your Bai family. No matter how arrogant Bai Yue is, he should come out. I think you're obviously guilty." Housekeeper Bai glared at him and said, "You called your friends and intimidated the Bai family. For an inexplicable accusation, you went up the mountain and forced my Bai family's ancestor to come out to meet you. You're quite arrogant." Seeing the two quarreling, Master Jing came out to mediate. "Both of you, please calm down. Almsgiver Bai, we all admire Master Bai's reputation and achievements. If we weren't confident, we wouldn't have dared to come here rashly to provoke Master Bai. So, Butler Bai glared at him and said, "Well, Master Jing, do you also think that my old master is the murderer?" Monk Zhiying was at a loss for words. Monk Zhiying is a monk who doesn't take action if he can talk. They won't easily fall out with each other. You can't possibly say that your ancestor did it, right? At this moment, Sun Lang said, "I've fought with the murderer in Huaichuan. I think it's Bai Yue." After that, there were survivors who drew a sketch of Bai Yue. Those who have seen Bai Yue also think that it's Bai Yue. At least, this means that we're not slandering him for no reason. We're here today to get a result. Therefore, I want to ask your old master to come out and cooperate with us. This is for your own good." Butler Bai said with red eyes, "What? If we don't agree, you're going to use force?" Sun Lang waved his hand and said, "That's not what I mean. I mean, we've all seen Bai Yue's murderer. What if the murderer isn't Bai Yue? What does that mean? The murderer's martial arts are extremely high and rare in the world. If it's not Bai Yue, it can only mean that there's a 7 luminary sword saint pretending to be the gold luminary sword saint and framing him." He took a deep look at Butler Bai and said slowly, "Do you understand? If it's not Bai Yue who did it, it means that your Bai family has provoked such a strong person. Maybe there's something more troublesome. For example, the situation now. The rumors in the martial arts world are getting more and more intense. Maybe it's also part of the conspiracy to frame you." Butler Bai's face turned pale when he heard this. He muttered this. Even Master Jing and the others became surprised and doubtful. They exchanged glances and thought, why did Senior say this? Only Yang Tiandu, who had been silent all this time, lowered his head slightly to hide his slightly frightened eyes. He screamed in his heart, "It's starting. He's going to make a move. He really wants to pour all the dirty water on the Tensei province. Moreover, he really is colluding with the Bai family." Just as Hero Yang thought, he heard Steward Bai's sigh. "Senior's foresight is exactly the same as my master's. My family's head also suspects that there's a huge force targeting the Bai family." Hero Yang could even hear his own heartbeat. "This is really a double act between me and Butler Bai. They've already discussed this before." At this time, Sun Lang said, "Is that so? In other words, the Bai family's head is willing to talk to us?" Butler Bai calmed down and took 2 steps back. He bowed solemnly. "I'm Bai Hengqing. I've been ordered by my family's head, by Zhen Ming, to invite all the martial arts world friends up the mountain for a meeting." This turn of events was so sudden that Master Jing and the others almost sprained their backs due to their old age. They all had strange expressions on their faces as they thought, "We were here to demand an explanation from the Bai clan. We were here to demand payment from the Bai clan. How did it suddenly become a conspiracy? What's going on?" Only Yang Tiandu knew what was going on. All of this was a conspiracy. Sun Lang colluded with the Bai family to plot against the Tensei province. But he was wrong. Sun Lang and the Bai family were not as united and close as he thought. There was only a fine line between betrayal and loyalty. Chapter 668. The fierce confrontation turned into a closed-door meeting among the higher-ups. The result of the discussion was that Sun Lang would bring the 20 or so famous and powerful martial artists up the mountain for a lecture. The others would stay at the foot of the mountain. This was the result of Steward Bai's strong persuasion. He was very firm on this point. "You are all famous heroes in Jianghu. You are all honored guests of the Bai clan. If you want to visit the Bai clan, we will welcome you with open arms. However, the Bai clan is the most powerful clan in Qinzhou. If thousands of martial artists come and go as they please, what will happen to the reputation of the Sword Saints clan?" The considerate and simple Sun Lang felt that this was very reasonable. He persuaded the others, "Look, we are going to reason with them. If we can't come to an agreement, we will fight. Before that, let's save some face for the Bai clan. What if Bai Yue is not the murderer? Won't we become enemies with them? Besides, if we leave them outside, we can cooperate with them from the inside if something happens." The Bai clan fort was built on top of a mountain. Although the mountain path was smooth and wide, it was still a mountain path after all. If a fight really broke out, more than 1,000 people would be stuck on a mountain path, unable to move. They would be living targets. As long as a few rocks or logs were pushed down, their lives would be taken. Therefore, it was best for these dozens of people to go up the mountain. The others would wait at the foot of the mountain. If something happened, they would have more room to maneuver. After all, each and every one of these men was highly skilled in martial arts and had made a name for themselves many years ago. Furthermore, they were led by Sun Lang, who had defeated Bai Yue before. Even if the Bai clan fort was a dragon's lair or a tiger's den, they would still be able to venture into it. After all, the seniors are here, right? How can we lose when the seniors are leading the team? He is so powerful. What are we afraid of? This is a sure win. Thus, everyone made arrangements and gave instructions to their disciples. Then, under the gazes of thousands of people, they went up the mountain in a grandiose manner. Although the onlookers couldn't watch the show and were dissatisfied, the people who really meant what they said had already gone up the mountain. No matter how dissatisfied they were, it was useless. Sun Lang was sitting on the horse. Housekeeper Bai and the others were leading the way. He followed behind the crowd. Suddenly, he turned his head and glanced at the bottom of the mountain. Looking at the dense crowd, the corners of his mouth revealed a sneer. Yang Tian-du had been secretly observing Sun Lang's expression. When he saw that sneer, he was so frightened that he trembled. Mother ***, I'm panicking. What the hell is he trying to do? And Tensei province hasn't even started yet. What's going to happen next? Sometimes ignorance was bliss. At the very least, Hero Yang, who knew most of the truth, was one of the two people who were panicking the most. The other person was Bai Jinming. However, since Patriarch Bai had already panicked, he was no longer panicking. When he heard that Sun Lang had arrived at the foot of the mountain, the fear in Bai Jinming's heart reached its peak. He froze in the middle of the towering residence, unable to move. It was as if his soul had been frozen. Time dragged on, and the world became silent. Many things of the past floated up in his mind. Those extremely ordinary little things were so beautiful in his eyes at this moment. He recalled, cherished, and was reluctant to part with them. He realized that he actually still had many things to do, but it was already too late. He could do nothing. After a long time, his inner clothes were soaked with sweat. He gradually came to his senses. He had panicked too much, so he stopped panicking. Not only did he not panic, but he also calmed down unexpectedly. He was ready. He was ready for everything. He slowly got up and ran his fingers across the worn desk. He had been using this desk for a long time. Everything, including this towering residence and the stone forest behind it, was arranged by him. He was familiar with it, and he was reluctant to part with it. But he could give it up. Now, it was no longer important. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath of the air here. A big net had been opened in the air. Was the Tensei province about to make a move? It was a big net that covered Sun Lang, making that person pay the price for his arrogance. He was ready. Today, the Bai family would be reborn from the ashes. Bai Jinming strode out of the towering residence. His voice was flat and powerful. Come, I want to meet the guest. Perhaps because she didn't sleep well last night, Xia Wei got up very late today. This was a rare occasion for her to stay in bed. She didn't know why, but she didn't want to get up at all. She didn't want to get up to meet the sun outside. The little minx rubbed her sleepy eyes and sat up. First, she instinctively touched the demon sword of Ketu beside her. Then she calmed down and said subconsciously, Sister Lu, good morning. A cold snort came from the spiritual link as an answer. The two of them were still in a cold war. The little minx thought of this and sighed softly. Her expression dimmed a little. Then she looked at the light coming in from the window and gradually found something wrong. Hey, why didn't the maid wake me up today? There were no refreshments on the table, and there was no sound outside. What's going on? And the little minx sat on the bed, looking more and more lost. He should be back today. Why hasn't he come to see me yet? Even if he has something to do, he can come and see me first. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but pout. Even if she knew that this was very unreasonable, because she didn't have a close relationship with Sun Lang. The relationship between the two was very strange. She was not qualified to ask for anything, but she still felt very dissatisfied and angry, and she stretched out her hand and pressed it against her chest, feeling her rapid heartbeat. It's starting again. Why do I feel more and more uneasy when Sun Lang is coming back today? Is it because I have to tell him about my brother? Do I have to show my card to him? Thinking of this, her mood became even more depressed. Sigh, the outside world is really bad. No wonder the teachers are willing to stay in the valley, because the troubles outside will never end. She reluctantly got out of bed, randomly braided her hair, washed her face with the cold water that she got last night, touched her empty stomach, and lazily opened the door to find something to eat. Huh? She blinked. The little minx slowly lowered her head. There was something on the ground in front of the door. It was a letter wrapped in the most ordinary yellow letter paper. There was nothing written on the letter paper. Xiaowei immediately looked around. There was no one around. She looked at the letter again. As if thinking of something, a bright and beautiful smile suddenly appeared on her face. Did he leave it? Did he already come to see me this morning? Because I was sleeping, he left a letter? I didn't expect him to be so careful. I thought he would kick the door and wake me up without saying anything. Thinking of this, she immediately bent down and picked up the letter. Ji Du slowly floated out from the inner room. Seeing this, he said, "Wait," but the little minx couldn't wait to open the letter. The smile on her face was still bright, and her eyes were full of expectation. She couldn't wait to see what was written on the letter. But the next moment, the bright smile froze. Xiaowei's pupils suddenly shrank. Then, her body slightly shook, and her face became pale. At this moment, Sun Lang had already arrived at the gate of the Bai clan's castle with the heroes. The gate was wide open. A lone figure stood in front of the door. Housekeeper Bai and his entourage immediately rolled down from their saddles and saluted. "Greetings to the master." The lone person in front of the gate was naturally the master of the Bai clan, Bai Zhenming. He ignored the housekeeper and took a few steps forward. Then, he bowed deeply to the heroes who had not yet dismounted. "Bai Zhenming, please forgive me for not coming out to meet you. This matter involves a lot of things, so it's not good to let others know about it. Therefore, only I, Bai Zhenming, came out to greet you. I'm very sorry for my rudeness. Please forgive me." With such a humble attitude, everyone couldn't stay on their horses. Even Shimin Qing coldly snorted and followed the others down from their horses. Everyone returned the salute and said, "You're too kind." Bai Zhenming came forward and greeted everyone one by one, starting with Sun Lang. The two looked at each other. Bai Zhenming bowed deeply as if he was meeting someone for the first time. The master of the Bai clan was attentive, while Sun Lang was indifferent. After all, Sun Lang's identity was the senior who defeated Bai Yue. Therefore, Sun Lang was obviously on the same level as Bai Yue. Therefore, Bai Zhenming treated him like a nephew. There was no difference at all. Yang Tian-du saw this from the side and felt a chill in his heart. Acting, he really knows how to act. What is he thinking in his heart? But he guessed wrong. Bai Zhenming's thoughts were probably something that he couldn't figure out even if he cracked his head. After Bai Zhenming finished greeting everyone one by one, he politely invited everyone in. During this time, he kept apologizing. Probably because of the incident, he couldn't hold a big welcome ceremony. However, everyone didn't care about this kind of thing. If it was a normal time, they would still care about their reputation. But now is obviously not the time to care about that kind of thing. Everyone was led by Bai Zhenming to a magnificent hall. Along the way, it was very cold and cheerless. There wasn't a single person in sight. It didn't match the size of the Bai clan's castle. Shimin Qing was a loyal supporter of the Bai clan. In his mind, the Bai clan was almost the same as the Devil sect. Therefore, this cold and desolate environment made him feel alarmed. Damn it, could it be that this old man was pretending to be a grandson while preparing a killer? So he dispersed the servants in advance and set a trap here? Thinking of this, Shimin Qing sneered. It seems that the Bai clan doesn't have many people. It's convenient for us to walk around. Bai Zhenming's expression didn't change. He calmly said, "Brother Shimin, you must be joking. I have already given the order to forbid my family members from moving around. I don't want to offend you." The 4 doors and windows of the hall were wide open to show that it was open and aboveboard. There weren't any men of sacrifice lying in ambush. There weren't even any servants to serve them. Bai Zhenming invited everyone in and said, "There are no servants to serve you. I know that you don't trust the Bai clan, so I won't ask for a rebuff." Shimin Qing sat down on a chair and said casually, "Good. Mr. Bai invited us here. What do you want to say?" Bai Zhenming stood still for a moment. Suddenly, he knelt on the ground and kowtowed. "I hope that everyone in the martial arts world can save my Bai clan for the sake of my father's past achievements." Chapter 669. Toppling a golden mountain and toppling a jade pillar. The current head of the Bai family, the local tyrant of Sichuan, the leader of the Qinzhou aristocratic family alliance, and a respectable person of high society, Bai Zhenming. In the most prestigious place in Sichuan, in his own home, in the Bai family fortress, he knelt down. Everyone was shocked and stood up subconsciously. A few people who were close to him immediately reached out to take it. "You can't do that." Although they were here for the Bai family, they were all respectable people of Jianghu and had to carefully uphold the rules of Jianghu. The imperial court had a tradition of not humiliating each other, and the Jianghu also had a similar rule. Bai Zhenming was the head of the Bai family and the leader of the Sword Sage's family. His father was the famous gold radiant Sword Sage, and the Bai family was also regarded as a martial arts family. Therefore, they were here for the Huaichuan incident and followed the rules of Jianghu. Therefore, when they saw Bai Zhenming kneel, they could not sit still. After all, he was the head of a prestigious family. Even if he had made a mistake, they had to preserve his dignity and dignity. This was the rule of Jianghu, a rule for everyone's sake. However, when they reached out to help him up, Bai Zhenming remained kneeling on the ground. They reached out to pull him up several times, but he did not move at all. Master Zhiying sighed. "Mr. Bai, please get up. Why do you have to do this? If you have any difficulties, why don't you tell us and let us hear it?" Sun Lang sat on a chair and propped his chin on his hand. He crossed his legs and looked at Bai Zhenming with a faint smile. Yang Tiandu's gaze moved back and forth between Sun Lang and Bai Zhenming. He instinctively felt that something was not right. Sun Lang finally said, "Could there be more to this matter? Mr. Bai, what danger is the Bai family in that you need our help?" Bai Zhenming said sorrowfully, "Everyone, please understand. The Bai family has been in a precarious situation these days. First, there was the Huaichuan massacre, and then there were the heroes who went up the mountain. Rumors spread everywhere, and my father's reputation is on the verge of collapse. Not to mention the family business and reputation, even his life is at stake. The thousands of lives in the Bai family are all hanging by a thread and could be destroyed at any time." He spoke in an extremely sorrowful manner, and the listeners could not help but sympathize with him. Yes, such a big family business had fallen to such a state. However, Shimin Qing, who had a grudge against the Bai family, said coldly, "Your Bai family reaped what you sowed. If it weren't for your father's massacre in Huaichuan, how could your Bai family have fallen to such a state?" Bai Zhenming abruptly turned his head and glared at Shimin Qing. His face was filled with rage as he roared, "No." The Earth Extinction Saber Master was shocked. He immediately pressed down on the hilt of his saber and glared. "If you are not, then show us the evidence. Now, there are witnesses and material evidence. This senior is one of the people involved. Can you prove it to him?" Bai Zhenming glanced at Sun Lang, and a dejected expression appeared on his face as he slumped to the ground, not saying a word. Shimin Qing sneered. "What? Nothing to say? You reap what you sow. I advise you not to say anything useless. Hurry up and explain your father's crimes. Or you can call him out." Bai Zhenming sat on the ground and suddenly laughed bitterly. 2 lines of tears flowed down from his eyes. He closed his eyes and said painfully, "My father can't come out to meet guests anymore. He has already gone mad." Everyone was shocked. Even Shimin Qing could not help but widen his eyes and exclaim, "What?" Yang Tiandu was so shocked that he almost flew up. He looked at Sun Lang and was shocked. The gold radiance sword sage had gone mad. Could it be that he did it too? However, he saw that Sun Lang's face also showed a surprised expression. There was a hint of realization in his surprise, as if he had understood something. Yes, it shouldn't be him. He said before that there was something wrong with this matter. He should have noticed that Bai Yue's condition was not right, but he did not know that he had gone mad. So now that he heard it, he understood. No, wait. Didn't he collude with the Bai clan? How could he not know about this? Then why was he surprised? This guy is so good at acting. In a moment, Hero Yang's mind turned, and he quickly understood the matter. Then, he laughed at himself in his heart. F***CK, am I possessed? Although this guy is terrifying and can even defeat Bai Yue, how can he make a dignified sword saint go crazy? Hero Yang sighed in his heart, but the other side was in an uproar. The remaining 20 or so martial artists were shocked when they heard this. That was the Gold Radiance Sword Sage, the #1 martial artist of the generation who won the War of Heaven's origin. He was a living legend in the army and was revered by everyone. Even these people who came looking for trouble maintained the greatest respect for him. How could such an earth-shattering, world-renowned figure go mad? Shi Menqing was the first to react. He said loudly, "Don't try to fool us with this. You say that he's gone mad, and this matter is over? Then the hundreds of lives can be written off just like that?" Reverend Z. Mo waved his hand and said, "Benefactor Bai, this matter involves too many things. It's difficult for us to believe your one-sided story. How long ago did old Master Bai go mad?" Bai Jinming's spirit was a little weak, but everyone could understand. Bai Yue was the biggest pillar of the Bai family. If this pillar collapsed, it would be equivalent to the collapse of the Bai family. He was silent for a moment and then said calmly, 2 years ago, after the victory of the war, my father returned home in glory. At that time, he had some mental problems, and his physical condition was not as good as before. Everyone looked at each other. Shi Menqing said coldly, "So, what you mean is that your father went mad 2 years ago, and that's why he couldn't go to Huaichuan to kill people?" Bai Jinming looked at him sadly and said sadly, "No, the Huaichuan massacre was indeed committed by my father." Sun Lang's expression did not change. He listened attentively and changed to a more comfortable position, as if he was watching a live show. Hero Yang knew the details, so he was also watching Bai Jinming's performance. When he heard this, his expression changed slightly. Wow, how could he expose his father's mental illness and admit that he was the murderer? Didn't you want to shift the blame to the Tensei province? If you admit to this, even if you succeed in shifting the blame, your father's reputation will be tarnished. In order to deal with the Tensei province, you're even willing to throw away your father's reputation? He was thinking about the collusion between Sun Lang and the Bai family. He thought to himself, looks like they're going to shift all the blame to the Tensei province. They're even going to shift the blame to the Tensei province for Bai Yue's mental illness. Insidious, insidious indeed. However, how did Bai Yue go mad? He was the 7 Luminaries' Grand Sword Master, one of the top martial artists in the empire. Martial artists had a strong will and were extraordinary. Bai Yue was a dragon among men. How could he go mad so easily? After hearing Bai Jinming's confession, the crowd exploded again. As a loyal supporter of the Bai family, Shi Menqing took on the role of interrogator. He asked, "It's good that you admitted it, but so what? Are you saying that your father is crazy and has lost his mind? That's why he can't control himself and doesn't need to pay with his life for killing someone?" Bai Jinming smiled bitterly. A life for a life is a matter of course. However, in this world, other than a life for a life, there's also the principle of the son paying for a father's debt. Master Jing immediately said, "Amit Ba, Mr. Bai, don't be rash. Even if you take the blame on behalf of your father and pay with your life, it won't solve any problems. What the hell? If he forced Bai Yue to die here, he wouldn't be able to explain himself even if he had 8 mouths." Unexpectedly, Bai Jinming forced a smile. "Master, don't worry. I won't put you in an unjust situation. Even if I have to pay with my life, it won't be right now." Then he said softly with a sorrowful expression, "Maybe I won't even have the chance to kill myself. Shimin Qing said impatiently. What do you mean? What are you trying to say? Bai Zhiming took a deep breath and tried to speak as calmly as possible. Today, I'll tell you everything I know. The Huaichuan incident was indeed my father's doing. The men of the Bai family always keep their promises and will never shirk responsibility or quibble. However, have you ever thought about it? With my father's status and identity, why would he go to Huaichuan and kill someone for no reason? If my father is crazy, why would he travel thousands of miles to Huaichuan to kill someone? Hearing this, Yang Tiandu shouted in his heart, It's here. It's here. He's going to shift the blame. Master Jing and the others nodded slowly. Bai Yue's motive was the biggest doubt in this case. Taoist Master Bai said, Ba, Mr. Bai, are you saying that there's more to this than meets the eye? Bai Zhenming nodded slowly and said through gritted teeth, after the Huaichuan incident, the martial world was in turmoil. Heroes from all sects and clans gathered as fast as they could to interrogate the Bai family about the incident. Rumors were everywhere and chaos was everywhere. The imperial court sat on the fence, and Qin province pretended to be deaf and dumb. Don't you think that everything is going too smoothly? Everyone was shocked again. Bai Zhiming clenched his fists and closed his eyes. He said with difficulty, all of this is a conspiracy against the Bai family. The Huaichuan incident was caused by my crazy father being manipulated by someone. Then there were rumors, framing, and framing. The mastermind behind all of this is behind all of this, including the fact that all of you are standing here today. Everything is part of the conspiracy. Some of the martial world's heroes who came to the Bai family fort were in the know. They were shocked when they heard this. Isn't he talking about Tensei province? What's the use of this? A cold glint flashed across Shimin Qing's eyes. A conspiracy? The mastermind? Who is it? Don't you dare come up with lies to fool us. Bai Zhenming shook his head and said, Don't all of you have solid evidence for coming to the Bai family fort to settle the score? Without solid evidence, why would I reveal my father's condition to all of you? Why would I admit that my father was the culprit of the Huaichuan incident? The disciples of the Bai family are indomitable and upright. We will admit what we have done. If we are framed, we will not let our enemies off easily, even if we die. Shimin Qing's expression softened slightly. He said calmly, Then tell us their names. You must be familiar with this person. Bai Zhiming raised his head. His expression was calm, and his eyes were indifferent. It was as if he was a monk who had seen through everything and accepted his fate. He looked at Sun Lang. His tone was light and flat. It's him. Chapter 670. Tom went back to the past. Xia Wei, who had just woken up, opened the letter in her hand with excitement and joy. She hadn't seen Sun Lang for 2 days, and her heart was empty. This innocent and ignorant little goblin, who grew up in a valley far away from human habitation, had faced the malice of human greed at the beginning of her life. Then, she carried the incomparably tangled hatred of killing her brother. After wandering the world for more than 10 days, she had accumulated more worries and worries than she had in the previous 10 years. She longed for someone to listen to her worries and ease her uneasiness. Even if he stayed by her side, she could feel at ease. Bai Yue couldn't do this because he had lost his memory and couldn't even take care of his own affairs. Sister Lu couldn't do it either. She was impatient and had a bad temper. She treated people with haste and would take care of people, but she didn't know how to comfort people. Only Sun Lang could do it. Although his temper was eccentric, his thoughts were strange, and his actions were unreasonable. She always felt that he was a person she could rely on. When she woke up today, she found that Sun Lang didn't come. She was very disappointed, but when she found the letter in front of the door, she was happy again. She believed that Sun Lang had already come, but she slept too deeply and was busy with business, so she had already left. However, he still left a letter. What would be written in the letter? Xia Wei was wrong after all. The letter wasn't written by Sun Lang. Obviously not, undoubtedly not, absolutely not. Sun Lang would never write such content. There were only a few dozen words in the letter, most of which were personal names. The remaining 2 sentences were just a suggestion. From beginning to end, there was no conclusion and no facts were told. However, the content inside set off a violent storm in Siawei's heart. Jidu discovered the little goblin's mental state and flew over in surprise. What's written on it? Siawei subconsciously stretched out her hand and concentrated her demon power. The thin letter turned into flying ash and fell to the ground. The bee asterisk suddenly felt uneasy and asked again, "What's written on the letter?" Siawei still stayed in place. Her face was pale, her body was trembling slightly, and her eyes slowly lost their color. The uneasy sword spirit was trying to ask a third time when Siawei suddenly turned around and ran away without saying a word, in the direction of Bai Yue's residence. He had even forgotten to bring the Catus sword. Ji-Du floated in the air and chased after him. He shouted in the spiritual world, "Hey, Siawei, Siawei, what's wrong with you?" The usually polite little fairy turned a deaf ear to his words. Her face was expressionless and her eyes were empty. Her entire being exuded a desperate and intense aura. The sword spirit had never thought that the silly little fairy would become like this. Perhaps because Siawei's mental state was too frightening, the B*TCH personality didn't dare to forcibly stop her. Rushing to Bai Yue's residence, Siawei kicked the door open without saying a word. Bai Yue was still in a locked state. He was sitting in a room and was shocked when he heard the movement. When he saw Siawei come in, he relaxed and smiled. "Why are you so late?" "No one came to deliver breakfast this morning. I'm a little hungry. Have you eaten?" "You." The second half of the sentence was swallowed back into his stomach. Even if Bai Yue only had the mind of a child at this time, he could see the huge abnormality of Siawei. The little fairy stared at Bai Yue without saying a word. Ji-Du floated in quietly, and his tone was a little cautious. "So," Siawei reached out and grabbed the hilt of Ji-Du's sword. The two had signed a contract, and their minds were the same. The demon sword would not refuse the touch of the swordmaster. The purple light swooshed, and the sharp sword tip pierced towards Bai Yue. Bai Yue screamed and subconsciously closed his eyes. But then he felt his body loosen, and the sound of metal falling to the ground came one after another. Siawei's sword pierced through the herring golden lock formation that bound Bai Yue. Old Bai didn't have a trace of joy from being free. He opened his eyes and said uneasily, "Sun Lang will be angry." Hearing this name, Siawei's body shook and his eyes flashed with pain and despair. The little fairy grabbed Bai Yue's arm and said concisely, "Come with me." Bai Yue's body was invulnerable. Even Sun Lang couldn't break his defense with his bare hands. If he didn't want to move, even 100 Siawei wouldn't be able to pull him. But he couldn't refuse this girl, even if she looked very abnormal now. As a result, Bai Yue was pulled up and dragged by Siawei out of the door. There was no explanation. The little fairy was holding the Ji-Du demon sword that was comparable to the 7 luminaries' sacred sword in her right hand and dragging the famous gold radiant sword saint in her left hand. Her expression was solemn and her aura was fierce. She was usually naive, cute, gentle, and generous, but at this time, it was as if she had changed into a different person. Her sudden change even stunned Bai Yue. If there were no accidents, this scene would be the peak of her life. Bai Yue had lost his memory, and his mind was that of a child. He was dragged by Siawei and whispered, "Where are you taking me?" Siawei's face was cold, and she didn't say a word, or maybe she didn't know what expression to show or how to explain. But there was no need to explain because she soon arrived at her destination. In a remote and desolate place that no one cleaned, an abandoned house stood among the messy grass, and moss covered the mottled steps. This was the place Siawei had been before, the place she couldn't forget, the place that was engraved with words and despair. After leaving the abandoned house that day, she had been restless. She felt that she had missed something and even felt that something in the abandoned house was calling her. She thought it was all an illusion, but it wasn't. The little fairy suddenly shed tears. The sword spirit seemed to have thought of something. "Hey, could it be?" Siawei didn't speak. She used her right hand to drag Bai Yue in the direction of the abandoned house. "Follow me." Bai Yue looked at the dilapidated house in front of him, and a trace of panic flashed in his eyes. He hesitated and said, "This house. I don't want to go in." The little fairy looked back at him. Her indifferent and cold eyes seemed to want to devour people. Bai Yue's weak thoughts of resistance were immediately destroyed by this gaze. The little fairy exerted force, and he involuntarily stepped on the stone steps. Xiaowei kicked the door open, her eyes so cold that it seemed to have frozen. With the opening of the door, the frenzied spiritual storm in the dilapidated house unleashed terrifying waves. Just the aftermath alone was enough to make mortals tremble in fear. Xiaowei stepped in and pulled in Bai Yue, who had a look of fear on his face. The surrounding walls were engraved with countless names. Every word was filled with blood, grief, and madness. It was the most painful cry and deepest despair of the gold radiant sword saint, Bai Yue. The berserk spirit storm pressed down from all directions. Bai Yue suddenly screamed in pain and fell to the ground. He shouted, Where is this place? I don't want to stay here. Let me out." Xiaowei looked at him coldly. The spiritual power from all directions also attacked her soul, but it didn't matter anymore. Just like flames couldn't hurt flames and floods couldn't destroy floods, despair and pain couldn't defeat another kind of despair and pain. She looked down at Bai Yue, who fell to the ground, and said calmly, "Xie Hui, Xie Shi, Xie Ming, Xie Zhao." Names came out of her mouth one after another. They all had the surname Xie. They were all monsters and had the same background. These names seemed to awaken some memories. Bai Yue pressed his head in pain and said loudly, "What are you talking about? Let's go. I beg you." Xiaowei continued to say these names and said dozens of them. Her tone became colder and colder. "Don't you remember? These people. No, these horned tigers. Horned tigers." This strange and familiar name was imprinted in Bai Yue's mind. Countless broken images suddenly surged out, giving the gold radiance sword saint a splitting headache. He shouted, "I don't know. I really don't know. I don't remember. What about this?" The little fairy roared even more fiercely than Bai Yue. A cold light flashed, and the sharp blade pierced the floor beside Bai Yue. The short blade was like a piece of art. The crystal clear blade, the mysterious and familiar material. Xiaowei pulled out the blade and placed it in front of Bai Yue's eyes. She repeated, "Don't you remember this blade? This is a horn shed by a horned tiger. Every horned tiger has one. You know it. You remember it." More and more memory fragments appeared. Bai Yue's head hurt even more. But the little fairy continued. "My father, Xie Hui, was a military judge under your command. He trusted you, so his brothers and family all trusted you and were willing to follow you. They followed you through life and death, fought on the battlefield, resisted the sky demon, and protected the common people." Xiaowei looked at Bai Yue's confused eyes and said calmly, "They are all dead. My father, my uncles, my mother, my family, they are all dead. I became an orphan and I never saw my family. I was alone for as long as I could remember. My family and relatives all died on the battlefield. They fought under your command, so..." The little fairy looked at Bai Yue and suddenly chuckled. "You should at least tell me how they died, right?" She looked around at the walls that were densely engraved with names. "You should at least tell me where they are." Bai Yue's body couldn't stop trembling. He revealed a look of fear and struggle as he shook his head. Xiaowei's tone was still gentle, as if she was coaxing a child. "Good boy. Tell me, where are they?" Bai Yue refused with difficulty. "No, I can't." The gentle tone turned into wind and frost. Xiaowei roared, "Tell me." Bai Yue's body suddenly shook, and his expression became more and more terrified and desperate. The little fairy grabbed Bai Yue's collar and almost roared, "They are dead. Their names are among them, right? Where are they? How did they die? Who killed them?" At this point, there was no point in asking this question, but she still had a bit of luck in her heart. She had to hear Bai Yue say it himself. Bai Yue's body was already filled with despair. His earth-shattering strength couldn't bring him any sense of security. His strength to resist was extremely weak. He begged, I don't know, I really don't know. Don't be like this. Xiaowei stared at him and said indifferently, these names were all carved by you. I am Horned Tiger. I can feel the pain and despair in these words. You are guilty. You are desperate. You are uneasy. You are tortured. Your heart is full of guilt. You went crazy because of this, didn't you? Bai Yue closed his eyes in pain and said in vain, don't say it. Don't. If Xiaowei saw this scene normally, her heart would have already softened, but it was different now. She seemed to be possessed, but anyone who encountered this kind of thing wouldn't be much better than her. She stared at Bai Yue and said coldly, you are guilty. You are remorseful because these people died because of you, right? They trusted you and followed you, but you didn't protect them. You made them rush to their deaths. It was you who caused their deaths. Bai Yue heard this and suddenly opened his eyes wide. He shouted in panic, no, it wasn't me. Xiaowei said sternly, it was you. You killed them. You let them down. That's why you carved these names. Every person, every name. Look at the densely packed names on the wall. Every single one of them is a life that shouldn't have died. Every single one of them is someone that you owe. Look at their faces, their looks, they're all looking for you. They're all saying that you killed them. Bai Yue almost collapsed. He shouted wildly, it wasn't me. I didn't kill them. Xiaowei's voice was louder than his. The little fairy almost exhausted all her strength and anger as she roared. Then who killed them? Bai Yue showed an expression of despair and pain. He let out a sharp cry, denying the most fatal accusation. He shouted the name of the murderer. It was Sun Lang, the person in his memory. That's right, the battlefield paved with blood and fire, the constant killing and counting of the dead on the battlefield, the despair and cruelty that seeped into the bone marrow. It was like the sky had collapsed. 161,956, 161,957, 161,958. There was no doubt that it was that person. The murderer was Sun Lang. It was Sun Lang. Bai Yue fell to the ground powerlessly like a child. He curled up in fear and whispered, it was Sun Lang. He killed them. He killed them. Xiaowei also fell to the ground. When she heard that name, all her anger and strength disappeared. She didn't know what to think at this time, nor did she know what to do at this time. Her heart was only at a loss. She didn't know how long she had been sitting there, but her eyes moved slightly. For some reason, she looked in a certain direction. The door of this abandoned house was opened, and sunlight shone in, reflecting on the ground and illuminating some areas. She didn't have time to care about it before, but now she saw a letter lying quietly on the ground illuminated by the light. The envelope was the most ordinary yellow envelope, and the style was exactly the same as the one she saw before. She didn't know when it appeared here, waiting quietly. It was like a call from hell. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.